Why is yoga so important and special for you?
It's important because it's our culture. In our culture, yoga is must for the health-wise, wealth-wise, everything.
Okay. So you can see people have come from far and wide. I'm going to speak to a group of senior citizens here as well who have come for International Yoga Day celebrations. Good evening, good morning. Where are you from, sir?
I'm from the Long Island, New York, and हमको मोदी के योगा के लिए हम इधर आए हैं because of Modi wants everybody to be fit.
आप भी करेंगे योगा अंदर?
I'm doing every day. I'm doing here today. I'm doing here.
Ma'am, I want to ask you senior citizens के लिए why is yoga so important?
योगा बिकॉज सीनियर सिटीजन को तो योगा करना ही करना चाहिए क्योंकि फिटनेस रहने से किसी और के पे डिपेंड्स नहीं होना पड़ेगा, हम अपना खुद का ख्याल रखेंगे, वही तो मोदी जी की बात है। और प्राउड टू बी इंडियन एंड योगा तो करते हैं मगर आज हमारा मेन वो है कि हम आज मोदी जी को देखें।
Okay, so many of them are here to watch, to get a glimpse of Prime Minister Modi. Let me try and go across to the footsteps of the UN headquarters building where you can see people are making their way. We've got a few, you guys are volunteers, you've come here to take part in the celebrations?
We are students, we have come here to take part in the celebrations.
Have you managed to get a ticket to go inside?
We are still waiting.
And if you don't get, so you'll do yoga outside here on the sidewalk?
We would just wait for the Prime Minister and get a glimpse of him and hopefully do yoga here or go back to our university and do some study.
Which university are you guys studying in?
We go to New York University.
Yeah. All right, so today must be a working day, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You've bunked college.
No, it's pretty early for college.
Okay. Yeah. All right, good luck. I hope you get a chance to go inside. All right, we have more and more guests here. Sir, good morning. You've come in traditional Indian attire. Why are you here? कहाँ से आए हैं आप?
So we came from Boston.
Okay.
We are from Boston Center of Excellence, me and Professor Balram.
Yeah.
We both are coming from Boston. Today is a historic day, as we all know. And I was just mentioning to one of our friends that America, the biggest problem that America is facing is not of terrorism or climate change. The biggest problem as of current scenario is the healthcare. The amount of spend that America does on healthcare is $5 trillion, and the health outcomes are no good. And multiple studies from both Harvard, MIT, and Stanford have come out that saying that when you integrate yoga, naturopathy with modern medicine, that's the solution. And that's the solution not just for America but for the whole world. So today's importance of Prime Minister leading this yoga day is immensely important because that can help the entire world, not just America.
Sure. Sir, what are your expectations from today?
I see this as India's growing, expanding influence through yoga. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam does not come just by slogan. It does by doing. And this is what you're seeing here.
All right. Good luck. Hope you get a chance to go inside. As you can see, there are a bunch of people there, the crowds that are chanting Modi slogans as well. I want to try and see if Ravinder can get you those pictures. A person who is blowing the conch. You've got people who've come from New Jersey, from Boston. I met a lady who had come from California to be part of the Yoga Day celebrations. I'm going to try and give you a better sense of just how many people are there. Excuse me, ma'am, can I take? All right. So more and more people are trickling in. It is supposed to get started in another 20 minutes or so at 8 o'clock local time in the morning is what we are told. The official ceremony will begin. The Prime Minister will be joined by ambassadors from 180 countries and there will be more than 3,000 people is what we are told. Once again, you can see the registration desk. It's still busy. There's a lady who's come with her child as well who wants to take part in the Yoga Day celebrations. Let me try and speak to some of the individuals here as well. So are you one of the volunteers for the event today? How many people are you expecting today?
Around 3,000.
Around 3,000 people. Do you do yoga every day?
Yes.
Okay. Why is yoga so important?
It's good for health.
It's good for health?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Okay, so once again, here at the registration desk, you can see how it's packed and people are waiting for their tickets to go inside. Like I said before, many of them are lucky to go inside. About 3,000 is what the organizers are quoting in terms of the number that they are expecting to be inside. And the ones who cannot make it, of course, are going to be doing yoga here on the sidewalk outside the UN headquarters building.
It'll be interesting scenes there coming to the fore from New York, Zaka. It's going to be the first time in the 9 years that we are celebrating International Yoga Day, that Yoga Day is going to be celebrated by the Prime Minister outside of India. He's every single year for the last 8 years, he's been leading the celebrations here in India in different parts of the country. This time around, taking it to the world, like he said this morning through his video message as well, that has now become a global spirit.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's one thing that organizers here are stressing as well. You heard one gentleman who said that, you know, yoga is now getting more and more popularly accepted in the United States. There was, if you remember, back in the 60s and 70s, yoga was part of counterculture and so on. Bikram Yogi, BKS Iyengar, they're all sort of popularized yoga here in America. But today, it's become part of mainstream popular culture. And I think that is a point that a lot of people are emphasizing. As you can see, people are still trickling in. I believe from places like New Jersey, there were buses that were organized and people were coming in from about 6 or 7 in the morning. And as you see, as cameraman Ravinder panning and showing you these pictures, the crowds are still sort of coming in. They are hoping to get lucky, some of them, by managing the tickets. Let's, yeah, so they, like I said, people are still trying to get their tickets. Many of the lucky ones have already gone inside. The others are still waiting. And if they're not able to get the tickets, of course, they will roll their mats down here on the sidewalk in this beautiful Turtle Bay neighborhood, which overlooks the UN headquarters building and the East River on the other side. So this is where we are. I believe in about 20 minutes, the event will begin and the Prime Minister will be leading the Yoga Day celebrations, along with ambassadors of 180 countries who will all be in attendance today in the North Lawns of the UN building.
In 20 minutes from now is when that event begins. In just a few minutes from now, perhaps we are going to be seeing the Prime Minister's cavalcade make way for the UN headquarters. The dignitaries are perhaps already inside. It's not just delegates from the 185 countries that are going to be participating. There are several other celebrities that are also going to be part of this event, isn't it, Zaka?
Yeah, I met Ricky Cage. I don't know if you got that interview and got a chance to play out that interview, but Ricky Cage, multiple-time Grammy Award winner, he was here as well. As we try and see if we can speak to more individuals. Excuse me, sir, where are you from and why are you here?
No, sorry,
All right, you don't want to talk. Okay. So we see it's not just people from the Indian community, but even folks from America, Americans here are taking an active interest in Yoga Day celebrations and hoping to get a chance to go inside and take part in the Yoga Day celebrations. Let me now try and go across to some individuals who are here. Yeah, where are you from and why are you here?
We are from Ananda Marga. We're working all over the world every day teaching yoga and meditation. Today, we're very happy that Modi is gracing this occasion and yoga gets very much attention all over the world.
Are you seeing yoga getting accepted more and more in America?
Very much so, yeah. It's getting more accepted, and also meditation, which is part and parcel of yoga.
People say it's become like a fashion fad.
It's fashionable because it's good for health. It should be a part of everybody's life. It's like eating or drinking. Yoga should also be that much common, you know.
Ma'am, what would you say to people who are not practicing yoga or who don't think that yoga is helpful?
They should try one day, and then they will see that how much benefit they will get from it. Yes.
Okay, sir, you're here to see Modi as well. What will you tell him if you get a chance to meet him?
I will tell him just you generate the Yoga International Day is popularized all over the world. But I like to give the message to him, just popularize the meditation. Meditation is not a religion but a science to discover endless peace and happiness within not outside.
Sir, आपका क्या expectations है? आपका क्या उम्मीद है from today?
First of all, News 18, thank you so much for covering. You can see United Nations standing tall, the Indian tricolor. 194 representatives today, including India, US, Pakistan, China, Russia, Ukraine, and all across the globe, will be performing yoga inside under the leadership of Modi ji. The world's oldest democracy, which is the United States of America, and the world's largest democracy and the world's largest populous country, which is Bharat, India, they are coming close ties together. We talk about Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, the whole world is one family, which is what we are doing today. The whole world is coming under one roof, performing the most ancient thing, which is the yoga. That's a way of life. So we appreciate Modi ji leading this initiative, and as an NRI having a dual heritage, we really appreciate this opportunity, and thank you so much for covering it, sir.
All right, thank you so much. So there you say NRIs are quite excited in taking part in the Yoga Day celebrations. Let's try and also speak to some individuals who've gathered here. Sir, where are you from and why have you come here?
I'm from Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and definitely we are here for look at our global leader Narendra Modi on a Yoga Day. Yoga have a really powerful tool, and due to that, we can make a Bharat Vishwa Guru.
Do you do yoga every day or just on Yoga Day?
I believe in a Surya Namaskar because if you do Surya Namaskar, you cover almost more than 10 asanas, and definitely that's the only tool you make healthy and wealthy both.
All right. Senior citizens are also here, sir. आप कहाँ से हो?
बस अहमदाबाद से, ये मेरा सन है।
अच्छा, आपके बेटे हैं। तो आप यहाँ किस लिए आए हैं?
बस घूमने के लिए आए इधर।
अच्छा, और यहाँ योग करने के लिए?
हाँ, योग करने के लिए आया था, लेकिन वो अंदर जाने के लिए नहीं मिला।
तो जाना नहीं दे रहे हैं अंदर। तो अब क्या करेंगे? यहाँ साइड वॉक पे करेंगे?
साइड वॉक करेंगे योगा, लेके तो आए हम मैट।
So that's also one of the things.
And you may, do a favor to go inside. If you.
No, I'm not one of the organizers. I'm just part of the media that's covering this event. But there are a few people who have not been able to get the registration done. So some of them are not able to go inside. I'm told, as you heard from this elderly gentleman, they expect to sort of roll out their yoga mats here on the sidewalk and take part in the yoga celebrations along with
They may not have been
Prime
able
Minister
to.
Modi. Like I said, 180 countries.
Yes.
Yeah, go on. Yeah.
Go ahead, Zaka.
जय भारत माता की जय माता की जय मातरम 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 मोदी जी जिंदाबाद मोदी जी जिंदाबाद मोदी जी जिंदाबाद.
So there you have it. It's a mahal of excitement here ahead of International Yoga Day. So clearly, people are excited. Like I said, many of them, about 3,000 of them, are expected to go inside to take part in these celebrations, which will start anytime now in the next 10 to 15 minutes or so.
Many of those who've gathered there unfortunately haven't been able to make the cut, so to say, but that hasn't dampened their spirits. They are going to still ensure that they're part of this grand celebration, even if it's outside the headquarters, outside the actual venue, even if it's on the sidewalk, they're still going to go ahead, and that's something that they are going to continue, because this is about celebrating India's gift to the world. Zaka, do stay on with me, because this morning the Prime Minister also released a video message. He may be in the United States, but it's already evening of an International Yoga Day for us here in India, which is why that message came to the fore bright and early morning here for us at about 6 a.m. when the Prime Minister spoke about how the message of one earth, one family, one future, the message of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam is the one that we are putting forth for the world through this particular event. Listening to what the Prime Minister had to say.
भारत के आह्वान पर दुनिया के 180 से ज्यादा देशों का एक साथ आना ऐतिहासिक है, अभूतपूर्व है। तब से लेकर आज तक अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस के जरिए योग एक वैश्विक आंदोलन बन गया है, ग्लोबल स्पिरिट बन गया है। साथियों, इस साल योग दिवस के कार्यक्रमों को ओशन रिंग ऑफ योगा इसने और विशेष बना दिया है। ओशन रिंग ऑफ योगा, इसका आइडिया योग के विचार और समुद्र के विस्तार के पारस्परिक संबंध पर आधारित है। सेना के जवानों ने भी हमारे जल स्रोतों के साथ एक योग भारतमाला और योग सागरमाला बनाई है। इसी तरह आर्कटिक से लेकर अंटार्कटिका तक भारत के 2 रिसर्च बेस यानी पृथ्वी के 2 ध्रुव भी योग से जुड़ रहे हैं। योग के इस अनूठे सेलिब्रेशन में देश दुनिया के करोड़ों लोगों का इतने सहज स्वरूप में शामिल होना योग के प्रसार और प्रसिद्धि को, उसके महत्मय को उजागर करता है। भाइयों और बहनों, हमारे ऋषियों ने योग को परिभाषित करते हुए कहा है, युज्यते एतद इति योगः, अर्थात जो जोड़ता है वो योग है। इसलिए योग का ये प्रसार उस विचार का विस्तार है जो पूरे संसार को एक परिवार के रूप में समाहित करता है।
Humanity and nature, and millions of people across the globe for whom it is a source of strength, harmony, and peace. In a dangerous and divided world, the benefits of this ancient practice are particularly precious. Yoga offers a haven of calm. It can reduce anxiety and promote mental well-being. It helps us to develop discipline and patience. It connects us to our planet, which so badly needs our protection. And it reveals our common humanity, helping us to understand that despite our differences, we are one. On this International Day of Yoga, let us embrace the spirit of unity and resolve to build a better, more harmonious world for people, planet, and ourselves.
Some celebrities have landed up here in New York as well to do yoga with Prime Minister Modi. Ricky Cage, multiple-time Grammy Award winner. What are you doing here?
So don't let the jacket fool you. I'm wearing yoga clothes underneath it, but I'm really excited to be over here and take the lead from Prime Minister Modi and practice some yoga today.
So tell me, have you done yoga before? Do you practice yoga? How do you keep yourself fit and mentally sound?
Actually, I do not do as much yoga as I should be doing. But I hope that's going to change right now. But nevertheless, I try to do as much as I can. I think yoga is a very, very good way to keep healthy.
And what are you looking forward to today inside the UN headquarters?
Of course, being led by Prime Minister Modi, that's the one most thing that I'm looking forward to. And I've attended these yoga events at the UN in the past years, but this year is going to be massive and huge.
In just a few minutes from now, 10 minutes to be exact, is when the Prime Minister is going to be leading that mega event at the UN headquarters in New York. 185 countries are going to be a part of this mega event. Remember, it is for the first time that the Prime Minister is leading the International Yoga Day celebrations outside of India. He's done so in different cities of the country for the last 8 years, but this time around there is true recognition from the world for yoga, for India's gift to the world. It is about one world, one family, one future. That's the message the Prime Minister also gave today. That's also what the United Nations is echoing. We've seen thousands of people that have already gathered there. In any minute now, we are going to be seeing the Prime Minister's cavalcade reach the UN headquarters. Before we get you those live pictures and the mood on ground there in New York, let's also listen in to some more reactions that are coming in.
From the United Nations headquarters here at Turtle Bay at the intersection between East 46th Street and First Avenue, this building that we are also familiar with in our history textbooks, in our civics textbooks. Today it's going to be the venue of the celebration of the International Yoga Day, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be leading a crowd of people. You can already see how there are a few hundred people who have all registered. They're all waiting to go inside and take part in these Yoga Day celebrations, which the Prime Minister will be leading. They've come from near and far, many of them from different corners of the United States, to take part in the Yoga Day celebrations. They're all waiting to register and go inside. We're given to understand that there will be some celebrities who will be taking part as well. Over 1,000 people are expected to be part of these Yoga Day celebrations that the Prime Minister will be leading. We're given to understand at 8 o'clock local time is when it will start. Like I said, people have come from as far as California and Washington State, from Seattle, from different parts, from different corners of the United States, and some people have come all the way from India as well. So I'll try and see if I can speak to a few of them. Hello, ma'am. Have you come here for the Yoga Day celebrations?
Yes.
Where are you from?
I'm actually from New York.
You're from New York. What is so enticing about yoga? Why have you come here on a working day?
Because yoga is so important, and if we're going to celebrate it one day of the year, then I'd like to be a part of it.
All right. Thank you very much. Young man, where are you from?
I'm from Queens, New York.
All right. And why are you here?
I'm here because I love yoga, and yoga is awesome, you know.
How long have you been doing yoga?
Yoga, I've been doing it for 3 or 4 years now, and it's been like great for my health, you know.
What are your expectations from the Prime Minister leading Yoga Day celebrations today at the UN headquarters?
I don't really have any expectations, you know, just have fun, live, you know, have fun.
All right, congratulations. Thank you very much. So you can see a lot of people have come from near and far, many of them residing here in New York in different parts. I've got another... Ma'am, where are you from and why are you here?
Well, I'm from New Jersey and I'm here to see our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi, and of course to do a little bit of yoga too.
Have you been practicing yoga? Are you a practicing yogi?
Not at all. I'm not a yoga person, but I actually am here to tell you the truth, just to see Narendra Modi.
Just to see Mr. Modi. And if you get the chance to speak to him, what will you tell him?
One question I will definitely ask him is, where does he get all his energy from?
Yeah. Maybe from yoga.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Is this your daughter? What's your name?
My name is Trisha.
All right, and you're here for?
I'm also here for the yoga and to see Prime Minister Modi. I'm very excited.
What makes...
Many people there, the excitement is high. There are many people, unfortunately, that still haven't been able to make the cut, so to say, and go inside. But Zaka Jacob joining us from on ground there outside the UN headquarters in New York. Zaka, is there any movement as far as the Prime Minister is concerned? We are expecting over, at least the event was scheduled about 6 minutes from now.
All right, so we're outside the west gate of the UN. This is where the access has been given to the participants who are going to be taking part along with Prime Minister Modi. I believe that the VIP gate is on the other side, is on the east side, overlooking the East River. So, like you've been saying, a lot of people, I think a large number of people have managed to make their way in. There are a few who are still at the registration desk, still trying their luck. Trying if they can get their names squeezed in the last minute and try and go inside and take part in these Yoga Day celebrations. But like I said a moment ago, 180 countries are going to be represented today. Ambassadors of 180 countries are going to be there along with Prime Minister. You saw some celebrities. I think actor Siddhant Chaturvedi, if I'm not mistaken, I managed to spot him going in. You heard from Ricky Cage a moment ago. He was there. He's there as part of the crowd as well. So the organizers are expecting about 3,000 people who are part of these celebrations. There's a gentleman here. Sir, आपसे एक मिनट बात हो सकती है. आप कहाँ से हैं? क्या नाम है आपका?
Mahendra Bhai Patel.
And where are you from?
North Brunswick, New Jersey.
New Jersey. Why have you come here?
For yoga and Modi ji.
Okay. Did you get a chance to go inside?
I don't want to go right now because I want to outside. And that's why I'm not going inside.
What is this in your hand?
Shanknath.
Okay, Shanknath. There you see conch shells being blown, and it's a celebratory sort of atmosphere here. People from all walks of life. Remember, it's a normal working day. It's a Wednesday morning. If you look at, First Avenue, traffic is still pretty much as it is. It's going to be 8 o'clock local time in a couple of minutes. We've got some people here having flags of both India and America. Sir, where are you from?
From here, New York.
From New York?
Yeah.
What are you here for?
Oh, to say hi to Prime Minister Modi.
You think?
Get a glimpse of him. We're actually hoping to get into the yoga session, but haven't been able to.
Okay.
We're hoping we will shortly.
Do you think you'll be able to meet Prime Minister Modi today?
Oh, at least get a glimpse. I think it'll be tough to meet him. Yeah.
Why do you think yoga has become more acceptable in America these days?
Oh my goodness. So yoga and meditation go together. There's so much. I'm a physician in background, and
you're a doctor.
Yeah, and mental health is a major issue these days, not just around the world, but in America it's a major problem. And meditation is now mainstream, and in fact it's so helpful for mental health and wellness, and even all of us. We don't have to be mentally ill to meditate and do yoga. So it's about physical health and mental health.
All right, so you heard that from a doctor, a qualified physician, saying this is about physical health as well as mental health. There are more individuals here. Sir, आपका नाम क्या है और where are you from?
I'm from Princeton, New Jersey.
New Jersey.
Name is Professor.
आप यहाँ किस चीज़ के लिए आए हैं?
I came here to see and greet Modi.
You think you'll get a chance today?
I hope so. We'll try.
Okay, so people are still hoping that they can make it inside, hoping to get a glimpse of Prime Minister Modi and also getting to be part of the Yoga Day celebration. So clearly, like I said, it seems to be a bit of a festive mahal here at the UN headquarters. People still, the last few who are trying to make their way in, some of them still trying their luck at the registration desk. 3,000 people is what the organizers are expecting. Ambassadors from 180 countries. The official event itself will begin at 8 o'clock local time, which is a few minutes away from now. Prime Minister will be there till 9:15, and then at 10 o'clock he departs for Washington to continue the second leg of his US visit.
And it's going to be all business once he's in Washington, but at the moment all eyes are on that UN headquarters when we are seeing the Prime Minister going to lead the entire world in celebrating International Yoga Day. It's going to begin in just a few minutes from now. We're standing by for that. But Zaka, it'll be interesting to see if the Prime Minister, perhaps after the event, would actually come out and greet all those people who are waiting outside who wanted to get in but couldn't.
Interesting question, and the answer is I don't know. But let's see. We're also given to understand that some of the people who've come here who've not managed to get a chance to go in are planning to sort of roll their mats here on the sidewalk and then take part in the event as it begins there. The organizers had said that they were trying to arrange a big screen outside here at the West Gate. I don't see no big screen as of right now. So we don't know what exactly is going on inside. But like I said, a large number of people have managed their way into the event at the Yoga Day celebrations. About 3,000 people have managed their way in. A few unlucky ones have not been able to get their tickets, and therefore they're not able to get inside. We have a lady here. Ma'am, where have you come from?
Oh, I live right in New York City.
All right. Did you get a chance to go in?
I'm hoping. I have a pass, but let's see, you know.
Why aren't they letting you in if you have a pass?
No, I haven't tried yet. I just literally got here. No.
Why is yoga so important, you reckon?
Oh, I'm a yoga teacher, so I could carry on about this.
Okay. But in one sentence, what's so great about yoga?
We need yoga. It's essential for us to be as interconnected as possible so that we can be the peaceful warriors in this world, and to be here with Prime Minister Modi in the United Nations, for me, it's all about high peace.
And one final word. Are you seeing more and more Americans, regular American folks, being attracted by yoga, taking up yoga?
Absolutely. The yoga studios and events where I teach are filled. Actually, there tends to be more Americans, generally speaking, and I'd like to see more of my Indian brothers and sisters, South Asian brothers and sisters here. Thank you so much.
Right, thank you so much. So you have a yoga teacher there who's come from a different location here in New York, trying to make her way in. She has a ticket, but she's trying to sort of make her way into the event. So there you have it. Like I said, any moment now, we're expecting live pictures from inside where the Prime Minister will lead the Yoga Day celebrations. A large number of celebrities, I believe that Hollywood actors, some of them, will also be part of the crowd that will be taking part in the yoga celebrations along with the Prime Minister. I was told Richard Gere could be one of them. Like I said, it's happening inside. We don't have access to what's happening inside from outside here at the UN headquarters. But it is a momentous occasion, no doubt about it. The fact that here in New York City, an ancient Indian practice is being led forth by the Prime Minister of India, and 3,000 people are joining him on a busy Wednesday morning. That is something to feel proud about.
And it is a matter of pride because it's just the 9th International Yoga Day that we are celebrating today, even though for decades together, yoga has been practiced all around the world.
Absolutely, including here in America, because you remember yoga came into America as part of the counterculture movement. This was back in the 1960s, the 1970s. People like B.K.S. Iyengar, Bikram Yogi, they were all instrumental in popularizing yoga. And then, of course, you had the Beatles coming to Rishikesh, and that, of course, played a part in popularizing yoga in the West. But even in those times, in the 60s and 70s, it was not seen as part of mainstream popular culture. It was considered a bit like counterculture, and it was like the thing that the hippies do, kind of thing. It was viewed a little derisively. But I think over the years, particularly in the last few years, with all these hot yoga studios that have come up, and like one of the persons here said, who's attending this event, that there is now a growing realization, given healthcare costs in America, how important it is that mental health and meditation and yoga is becoming more and more important for the average American, and therefore they are seeing a large number of regular American folks being more interested in yoga now as compared to, let's say, 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. And I think that is something that is a big takeaway. It's been popularized by the United Nations with this International Day of Yoga, but it's gone beyond just being some kind of a token or a symbol or something that's just talked about or celebrated for just one day. This is something that has become sort of standard practice in everyday lives of average Americans. So there you have it. The crowd outside the UNHQ is now slowly but surely emptying out. Most of the people who have managed to get their registered names have gone in. The ones who have not have sort of left the building, as it were. But there you go, the entrance of the UNHQ. In the next few minutes, I believe you will start getting live pictures from inside, where the Prime Minister will be leading the Yoga Day celebrations along with a group of about 3,000 people is what the organizers are expecting, and ambassadors from 180 countries will be joining them as well. So that's going to begin any minute now.
And we are standing by for that, where we see the Prime Minister leading delegates from 185 countries, many other celebrities in this International Yoga Day celebrations as well. Zaka, the crowd might be thinning now, but spirits were high not too long ago. We'd seen the kind of enthusiasm on ground, and you were there speaking to all those people who were waiting to get inside. Before I come back to you, let's listen into some of those voices.
It's a mood of celebration, no doubt about it. I'm just going to ask my camera person, Ravinder, to give you a sort of bird's eye view. There are a few thousand people who've gathered here. They've come from different parts of America, different parts of the world to take part in the International Yoga Day celebrations. There's a lot of excitement. Many of them have come here just to want to get a glimpse of the Prime Minister. Let's try and interact with some of these individuals. Namaste, aapka naam aur aap kahan se hai, sir?
मेरा नाम है आचार्य अभिरामानंद अवधूत, तो मैं आनंद मार्ग से हूँ। मैं यहाँ न्यूयॉर्क में रहता हूँ।
और योगा डे कितना अहम बन रहा है आजकल?
योगा डे बहुत पॉपुलर है, पूरे 150 कंट्रीज में आज सेलिब्रेट हो रही है।
150 कंट्रीज
जी, पूरी दुनिया में आज जितने भी इंडियंस प्रवासी हैं सब लोग कर रहे हैं।
Alright, we have more friends here. So where are you from and why are you here?
I am Guru Dilip ji. I am the chairman of the World Yoga Community. I am originally from Cochin. Here we are organizing this event. That's it.
What is so exciting about Yoga Day and the fact that Prime Minister is going to be leading Yoga Day celebration?
Yoga Day is international. What else we need? It's a universal format, right? Anybody can practice without any discrimination.
Okay, ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from New York.
Okay, and why are you here?
To do yoga with Modi ji, hopefully.
To do yoga with Modi ji?
Yes.
You think you'll get a chance to speak to him today?
Hopefully. Yeah, I would love to.
Modi is our all right. You wish you. Where are all of you from? You're from New York?
No, from Robbinsville, New Jersey.
From New Jersey. How far is that place from here? Why are you here on a working day?
Yeah, 45 miles on the side. Yeah, it's all. Yeah, 1.5.
1.5 hours. 1.5 hours. All right. Sorry?
I've come from Boston.
You've come all the way from Boston?
Yes.
That's what, a 3-4 hour train drive?
4.
4 hour train ride. And what are you here for?
Yoga.
What makes yoga so special, and how has it changed in the last few years?
Oh, it's dramatically changes one's life. It's a way of life. It keeps you healthy, well, and mentally peaceful.
Do you think more and more Americans are also realizing that in the last few years?
Absolutely.
More Indians
Not only American, all over the world, the international is, it's a very...
Okay, I'd like to speak to the lady there at the back. You were saying, ma'am, where are you from?
We are coming from to the New Jersey, Robbinsville. We are the BAPs.
Okay.
BAPs temple. Mandir, Robbinsville.
Okay. And you're going to do yoga today with Modi ji?
Yes. Yes.
So why is today so special? Why is meeting the Prime Minister so special for all of you?
All this for the yoga.
For yoga.
A day with the Modi. A day with the Modi.
Okay, a day with Modi. I see a lady there at the back. Ma'am, where are you from?
I'm from New Jersey, Robbinsville.
Okay, all of you are from New Jersey, Robbinsville.
We are, yes.
And what are your expectations?
We are here from the Modi side.
Okay.
And Vande Mataram for Bharat our national.
What will you tell Modi Sahib? Okay. That seems to be the spirit of the place here right now. It's Kem Cho Majama, because a lot of people, I think the expectation from the organizers is that 3,000 people, including ambassadors from over 180 countries, are expected to join the Prime Minister as he leads these celebrations. It's a little past 7 o'clock local time here. 8 a.m. is when we are told that the Yoga Day celebrations will begin. The Prime Minister is expected to be here from 8 a.m. to 9:15, after which he departs for Washington, D.C. for the second leg of his U.S. visit. This is the first time that you're going to have Yoga Day celebrations right here at the UN headquarters. I just want to sort of paint the picture of what the scene is outside this UN headquarters building. You can see people are making their way in. Many of them, of course, have managed to get lucky registering themselves for this event, but many have also not been able to get in. So a lot of people, we're given to understand, will be doing yoga outside here on the sidewalk, the ones who are not able to get through. I just want to show you the registration desk here. It is still packed. We've got less than 30 minutes to go for the event, and the registration desk is still packed with people who are trying their luck to try and get in to the premises. Let me try and see if I can speak to some individuals, see if what's going on. We have Mr. Khanna here. Mr. Khanna, where are you from and why are you here?
I just come to meet Modi ji. I'm from New York only.
Why is yoga so special for you?
Yoga is very good for everyone, not for me.
We have a gentleman here, sir. What's your name and where are you from?
I'm Bipin from New Jersey.
From New Jersey. Okay, and why is yoga so important and special for you?
It's important because it's our culture. In our culture, yoga is must for the health-wise, wealth-wise, everything.
Okay, so you can see people have come from far and wide. I'm going to speak to a group of senior citizens here as well who have come for International Yoga Day celebrations. Good evening, good morning. Where are you from, sir?
I'm from the Long Island, New York. And हमको मोदी के योगा के लिए हम इधर आए हैं because Modi wants everybody to be fit.
आप भी करेंगे योगा अंदर?
I'm doing every day. I'm doing here today. I'm doing here.
Ma'am, I want to ask you, senior citizens के लिए, why is yoga so important?
योगा बिकॉज सीनियर सिटीजन को तो योगा करना ही करना चाहिए, क्योंकि फिटनेस रहने से किसी और के पे डिपेंड्स नहीं होना पड़ेगा. हम अपना खुद का ख्याल रखेंगे. वही तो मोदी जी की बात है. और प्राउड टू बी इंडियन. एंड योगा तो करते हैं, मगर आज हमारा मेन वो है कि हम आज मोदी जी को देखें.
Okay, so
watching or listening to the live webcast. This is a very special yoga event. I don't have to tell. Janata Deva Bhagam Yatha Purve Sanyanana Upasate Sanyanana Upasate Sanyanana Upasate.
where are you from and why are you here?
We are from Ananda Marga. We're working all over the world every day teaching yoga and meditation. Today we're very happy that Modi is gracing this occasion and yoga gets very much attention all over the world.
Are you seeing yoga getting accepted more and more in America?
Very much so, yeah. It's getting more accepted, and also meditation, which is part and parcel of yoga.
People say it's become like a fashion fad.
It's fashionable because it's good for health. It should be a part of everybody's life. It's like eating or drinking. Yoga should also be that much common, you know.
Ma'am, what would you say to people who are not practicing yoga or who don't think that yoga is helpful?
They should try one day, and then they will see that how much benefit they will get from it. Yes.
Okay. Sir, you're here to see Modi as well. What will you tell him if you get a chance to meet him?
I will tell him just you generate the Yoga International Day is going to is popularized all over the world. But I like to give the message to him, just popularize the meditation. Meditation is not a religion but a science to discover endless peace and happiness.
देशों के सामने दलील दी थी कि स्वास्थ्य एक बहुत बड़ा कारण और कारक है जो योग के माध्यम से दुनिया को फिट रखेगा, चाहे वो छोटी छोटी बीमारियां हो जो अब डेवलप हो रही है, ब्लड प्रेशर की बीमारी है, डायबिटीज़ की बीमारी है, शुगर लोगों को हो जाता है, तो इन तमाम चीज़ों को दूर करने का सबसे बड़ा इलाज जो है वो योग होगा। और यही दलील दी गई थी दुनिया भर के देशों में, जिसके कारण अब माना गया कि अब भारत का योग दुनिया भर में प्रचलित रहेगा, भारत का योग दुनिया भर के लोग मान्यता देंगे अब, और इसीलिए पूरी दुनिया के देशों ने मान्यता दी। मैंने पहले भी बताया कुछ देशों का विरोध था, लेकिन स्वास्थ्य के नाम पर सभी एकजुट थे। अपनी जनता को हर शासनाध्यक्ष स्वस्थ और हेल्दी देखना चाहता है। स्टे हेल्दी और फिट, ये हर किसी का नारा है। ये प्रधानमंत्री भी बार बार हर योग दिवस पर बोलते आए हैं कि स्वस्थ रहो फिट रहो, ये नारा है। और यही स्वस्थ रहो फिट रहो का नारा अब कारगर साबित होता जा रहा है, क्योंकि दुनिया भर के देश मान्यता दे रहे हैं और दुनिया भर के देशों से आए राजनयिक लोग यहाँ पर योग में हिस्सा लेंगे। मिडिल ईस्ट के लोग हैं, फार ईस्ट के लोग हैं, चाइना, जापान, अगर जापान के भी लोग नज़र आ रहे हैं, कोरियंस भी मुझे यहाँ पर मिले हैं। तो ये ऐसा नहीं है, अफ्रीका के लोग राजनयिक हैं, अफ्रीका के लोग हैं यहाँ पर, न्यूयॉर्क में बसे हुए वाइट्स भी हैं जो, तो ये इसको ये नहीं कहा जा सकता कि योग भारत तक सीमित रह गया। प्रधानमंत्री ने इसे ग्लोबल बना दिया है, दुनिया एक ग्लोबल विलेज है, तो उस ग्लोबल विलेज में स्वास्थ्य के लिए एक बहुत बड़ा हिस्सा बन गया है योग। और अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस उसका जीता जागता उदाहरण है, सबूत है कि अब प्रधानमंत्री की मोदी की पहल पर और पूरी दुनिया और सदियों तक ये इतिहास याद रखेगा कि प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की पहल पर जो उन्होंने UNGA में कहा था कि अब UN योगा को विश्व योगा दिवस के रूप में 21 जून को मनाया जाए, तो वो शुरुआत प्रधानमंत्री की हुई है। और अब जब पूरी दुनिया यहाँ पर योग मना रही है, प्रधानमंत्री 9 सालों में पहली बार जब विश्व योग दिवस घोषित होने के बाद पहली बार यहाँ पर योग दिवस का हिस्सा लेने आए हैं, तो ये दिखाता है कि भारत और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की बढ़ती ताकत, प्रधानमंत्री मोदी का जो रिकॉग्निशन है, जो पहचान है दुनिया भर के देशों में, उस पहचान को और पुख्ता करेगा ये विश्व योग दिवस। यहाँ हर शख्स, हर व्यक्ति, अगर आप देखें तो छोटे बच्चों के साथ माएँ आई हुई हैं। ये मैं आपको एक तस्वीर देखिए आप, ये छोटा बच्चा है, अपनी माँ के साथ मैट पर बैठा है। देखिए यहाँ के समय अनुसार 8:15 बजे का समय है कि प्रधानमंत्री यहाँ पहुँचेंगे, लेकिन अब मुझे लगता है मुश्किल से 5-7 मिनट का वक्त बाकी है। यहाँ शांति हो चुकी है, मंच से भाषण आप देख सकते हो, मंच से भाषण भी शुरू हो गया है, तो मुझे लगता है वो काउंटडाउन अब शुरू हो चुका है कि प्रधानमंत्री एनी टाइम पहुँच सकते हैं। यहाँ से 5 मिनट की दूरी पर ही प्रधानमंत्री का होटल है और उन्हें आने में मुश्किल से 5 मिनट का वक्त लगेगा। वो तैयारियाँ हो चुकी हैं, शांति हो चुकी है सड़क पर। मैं देख रहा हूँ ट्रैफिक भी अब धीमा रोका जा चुका है, तो प्रधानमंत्री के आने का समय हो चुका है। और जिस तरह से यहाँ भीड़ जमा हो चुकी है, लोग अभी भी जो खाली बची हुई मैट्स हैं, खाली बचे हुए जगह हैं, वहाँ पर आने के लिए अभी भी बाहर कतार दिख रही है। यहाँ टी-शर्ट्स लोगों को मिल रहे हैं, यहाँ लोगों का रजिस्ट्रेशन हो रहा है, अभी भी लोग आ रहे हैं। कि मैंने पहले बताया था कि 3 लॉन्च यहाँ पर जो संयुक्त राष्ट्र में परमानेंट मिशन है हमारा भारत का, उन लोगों ने बताया था कि संयुक्त राष्ट्र के परिसर में 3 पार्क हैं, तीनों पार्कों को उन्होंने बुक कर लिया है योग के लिए, ताकि कोई और कार्यक्रम ना आयोजित की जा सके। सिर्फ योग ही है जो दुनिया भर में जाए योग का कार्यक्रम, और यही हो रहा है। और प्रधानमंत्री जब राजकीय यात्रा पर यहाँ पहुँचे हैं यहाँ पहुँचे हैं न्यूयॉर्क। अब वाशिंगटन आज ही रवाना होंगे 10:15 बजे, 10:30 बजे तो अमेरिकी समय अनुसार वो वाशिंगटन के रवाना भी हो जाएंगे। 1 घंटे का कार्यक्रम है। 3,000 से ज़्यादा, 3 से 4,000 लोग यहाँ पर मौजूद रहेंगे योग करते हुए प्रधानमंत्री के साथ। तो मंच पे कुर्सियाँ तो लगी हैं, लेकिन संकेत ये भी है कि प्रधानमंत्री योग कर सकते हैं लोगों के साथ।
बीच में खाली जगह इसलिए कि लोग साफ-साफ दिखना चाहते हैं और सामने झंडे
to wear your Yoga Day shirts, and I see that almost everybody has them on. And you look beautiful today. I wish you could see yourself the way I see you. It's really very, very...
These are visuals coming in from inside the United Nations headquarters in New York, where the Prime Minister is going to be arriving in a short while from now. We're a little delayed on schedule, but the event is going to begin in just a few minutes from now. The participants have already taken to their mats, waiting for the Prime Minister perhaps to arrive and lead the congregation in celebrating the 9th International Day of Yoga.
कामयाब इसलिए हो चुका है क्योंकि ये जो भीड़ है यहाँ पर 9वें विश्व योगा दिवस के अवसर पे, ये भीड़ ही बता रही है। और ये सभी देशों से, सभी धर्मों से, सभी संप्रदायों से लोग आए हुए हैं यहाँ पर, दुनिया भर के। यहाँ बसे राजनयिक भी यहाँ पर मौजूद हैं। यहाँ योग गुरु आए हुए हैं। यहाँ मतलब गणना नहीं की जा सकती कि किस समुदाय से, किस संप्रदाय से लोग यहाँ पर आए हैं। ये बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है भारत सरकार की, प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की, और यही प्राउड मोमेंट है हर भारतीय के लिए, क्योंकि उनका योग जो आपने देखा होगा भारतीयों में भी, अगर सुबह मॉर्निंग वॉक करने वालों की संख्या बढ़ती जा रही है। अगर पार्क्स में जाएं, छोटे शहरों में, Tier 1 सिटीज़ नहीं, Tier 2 सिटीज़ में जाएं, हर जगह आपको लोग प्राणायाम करते, अनुलोम विलोम करते नजर आते हैं किसी भी पार्क में। तो ये बहुत बड़ी उपलब्धि है, क्योंकि प्रधानमंत्री ने जब से पद संभाला है उन्होंने स्टे फिट स्टे हेल्दी का नारा दिया है। तो ये उपलब्धि है प्रधानमंत्री की, और खुद ही योग करके उन्होंने देश की जनता को दिखाया है। तो ये कहना अतिशयोक्ति नहीं होगी कि देश में भी, भारत में भी इस प्राचीन परंपरा को लोकप्रिय बनाना, लोगों को इससे जोड़ना, ये प्रधानमंत्री ने किया है। और साथ ही साथ दुनिया भर के देशों को इस योग से जोड़ना स्वास्थ्य के नाम पर, ये भी प्रधानमंत्री की पहल का ही नतीजा है कि अब दुनिया के तमाम देश इसे मान्यता दे रहे हैं, चाहे वो कोई भी देश हो, चाहे दुनिया का कोई भी देश हो। यही सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि है प्रधानमंत्री मोदी की, और यही सबसे बड़ी उपलब्धि है भारतीय समुदाय को जो प्राउड फील कराती है, गर्व करवाती है। ये बहुत बड़ी बात है। और खासकर ये सबसे खास बात ये कि हम लोग यूनाइटेड नेशंस के परिसर में खड़े हैं, उसके लॉन्स में खड़े हैं, जहाँ पर ये पूरा कार्यक्रम हो रहा है। लोगों का हुजूम आप देखिए, अब लोगों का हुजूम, यहाँ पर लोग बैठ चुके हैं, और यूनाइटेड नेशंस का झंडा, मैं उसको दिखाऊं, यूनाइटेड नेशन का जो झंडा है वो लहरा रहा है, उसके ठीक नीचे लोग यहाँ पर जुटे पड़े हैं। अब प्रधानमंत्री के आने का वक्त हो गया है, और मैं आपको दिखाऊं कि अब सुरक्षा, मुझे लगता है यूनाइटेड नेशन जनरल असेंबली के चेयरमैन पहुँच रहे हैं यहाँ पर, और प्रधानमंत्री मोदी भी अब किसी भी क्षण यहाँ पर पधारने वाले हैं। लोगों का आना जाना अभी भी चालू है, चल रहा है, लेकिन प्रधानमंत्री मोदी के आने का जो काउंटडाउन है वो अब ख़त्म होने वाला है। प्रधानमंत्री अब पहुंचने वाले हैं, और साथ ही साथ देखिए प्रधानमंत्री अब पहुंच चुके हैं यहाँ पर मैदान में। मैं कैमरामैन पंकज तोमर को कहूँगा कि वो अब इस मैदान में आ चुके हैं, जल्दी वो मंच पर नज़र आएंगे। सारे सुरक्षा घेरे से घिरे हुए प्रधानमंत्री पहुँच चुके हैं। अब आप बता सकते हैं दुनिया को, प्रधानमंत्री की तस्वीर अब चंद क्षणों में ही नज़र आने लगेगी। यहाँ पर प्रधानमंत्री मोदी UNGA के परिसर में पहुँच गए योग दिवस के अवसर पर। लोगों को उत्साह से, लोग जो बैठे भी हैं, जो इंतज़ार भी कर रहे हैं, वो कोशिश कर रहे हैं कि प्रधानमंत्री की एक झलक मिल जाए। और अब प्रधानमंत्री भीड़ से घिरे हुए हैं, काफ़ी लोगों ने उनको घेरा हुआ है, वहाँ मैं मुझे तस्वीर में देख पाता हूँ। तो अब मंच की तरफ वो धीरे धीरे बढ़ रहे हैं। हर सब की नज़रें प्रधानमंत्री पर हैं। जितने भी लोग यहाँ पर योग करने के लिए जुटे हैं, सबकी अब देखिए प्रधानमंत्री की पहली झलक ये योगा की ड्रेस में है, इसीलिए अगर मंच पे बैठ रहे हैं तो इस ड्रेस को तो देख कर ये लग रहा है, उनके वस्त्र, उनके टी-शर्ट्स को, कि अब वो योग करेंगे, जनता के साथ ज़रूर बैठेंगे। तो प्रधानमंत्री अगर इस मुकाम तक पहुंचा चुके हैं योगा को, अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योगा दिवस मनाया जाने लगा है, इस बार 9वां अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस है, तो इस मुकाम पर पहुंचाने के बाद प्रधानमंत्री अब इससे पीछे नहीं हटने वाले। प्रधानमंत्री खुद यहाँ पहुँचे हैं और लोगों के साथ मिल रहे हैं। अब से कुछ ही देर में वो मंच पर पहुंचेंगे। तस्वीरें देखिए, प्रधानमंत्री अगर मैट पर बैठ रहे हैं, यानी योग प्रधानमंत्री करेंगे यहाँ पर। और प्रधानमंत्री का योग करना, कुछ दिन पहले भी हम लोगों ने तस्वीरें देखी थी, हम भारत में भी प्रधानमंत्री अगर पहली बार आपने याद है जब शासन सत्ता संभालने के 1 साल के अंदर ही उन्होंने योग किया था राजपथ पे, जो अब कर्तव्य पथ कहलाता है, जो प्रधानमंत्री ने जिसका नाम कर्तव्य पथ रखा है। रायसीना हिल में राष्ट्रपति भवन से इंडिया गेट को जोड़ने वाला जो रास्ता था, जिसे कभी राजपथ कहा जाता था ब्रिटिश राज के समय से, तो उसे प्रधानमंत्री ने उसका नाम बदलकर कर्तव्य पथ रखा है। वहाँ पर प्रधानमंत्री ने योग किया था। अब प्रधानमंत्री यूनाइटेड नेशन जनरल असेंबली के परिसर में, उनके लॉन्स में, उनके गार्डन में अब योग करेंगे। श्रद्धांजलि महात्मा गांधी को, महात्मा गांधी की स्टैचू भी वहाँ पर है। एक महात्मा गांधी, राष्ट्रपिता महात्मा गांधी, इनको श्रद्धांजलि देना प्रधानमंत्री कभी नहीं भूलते। भारत की आज़ादी में बहुत बड़ा योगदान है। और एक जिसे ब्रिटिश प्राइम मिनिस्टर चर्चिल ने कहा था नेकेड फ़कीर, जिसने भारत को आज़ादी दिला दी, उनको श्रद्धांजलि देना, कम से कम हर भारतीय को उनको शत नमन करना हर भारतीय का तो बनता ही है, खासकर योग दिवस पे। और प्रधानमंत्री अब देखिए ये झुंड, ये क्राउड, ये लोगों का हुजूम अब यही बताता है कि योग की लोकप्रियता कहाँ से कहाँ पहुँच चुकी है। और प्रधानमंत्री इस लोकप्रियता को और भी दुनिया भर के देशों में और भी लोगों में इसका संदेश फैलाने में कहीं से पीछे नहीं रहते हैं। और यही कारण है कि जब उनका अमेरिका का दौरा बना, जब राजकीय सम्मान का उनको न्योता मिला, जब उनको मौका मिला कि अब राष्ट्रपति बिदेन के साथ भोजन करना है, यूनाइटेड अमेरिकी कांग्रेस को एड्रेस करना है, तब प्रधानमंत्री ने अंतर्राष्ट्रीय योग दिवस में न्यूयॉर्क आने का भी कार्यक्रम अपना तय कर लिया था। तो ये बड़ी उपलब्धि है प्रधानमंत्री की कि अब प्रधानमंत्री की खासियत ही यही है कि अगर दुनिया के शासनाध्यक्षों की पसंद नापसंद का ही बहुत ख्याल रखते हैं, तो अगर तोहफा मिलता है तो उनकी पसंद का तोहफा देने में भी पीछे नहीं रहते। अगर आपको बता दूं, जब ओबामा से मिलने आए थे तो उनको मार्टिन लूथर किंग जूनियर और दूसरा महात्मा गांधी की भागवत गीता, दो किताबें उनको गिफ्ट की थी उन्होंने ओबामा को। और जब वो वहाँ के चले, साथ साथ एक बहुत बड़ा नारा दिया था भारत अमेरिका ने। तो भारतीय अमेरिका के संबंधों को और मजबूत करने में, भारत का पक्ष और मजबूती से रखने में प्रधानमंत्री काफ़ी आगे रहे हैं। और अमेरिका के साथ उनके अच्छे संबंध, राष्ट्रपति ओबामा के साथ उनके अच्छे व्यक्तिगत संबंध भी थे। अब राष्ट्रपति बिदेन ने उनको जब डिनर पे बुलाया है तो ये भी दिखाता है कि अब कितनी बढ़ती ताकत है भारत एक इकोनॉमिक सुपर पावर के रूप में वो उभरा है। कोरोना के समय भारत ने सबसे पहले दवाइयाँ बनाई थी, टीके बनाए, इसके लिए दुनिया भर के देशों को सप्लाई किया। भारत की अपने लोगों को काफ़ी लाइफ सेवर रहा कोरोना के समय। उस समय अर्थव्यवस्था भारत की इकोनॉमिक आर्थिक डोज देकर भारत की काफ़ी मदद की, भारत की इंडस्ट्री को।
And we see this as we look around to many people who aim to be the change that they want to see in the world.
You can hear chants of Modi there as the Prime Minister makes his way towards the podium. He is going to be leading that congregation on the 9th International Day of Yoga. There are at least 185 countries that are represented there, delegates of the United Nations that are present at the UN headquarters in New York. Several other dignitaries are also a part of this massive celebrations that we are seeing there in New York. Several people were waiting outside for hours together, hoping to get in. Unfortunately, there isn't a place for everyone. Some of them also tried to roll their mats out on the sidewalk outside the UN headquarters and perhaps join the Prime Minister as he leads the world in this Yoga Day celebration. There is the Prime Minister along with other dignitaries of the United Nations, several other celebrities as well who are taking to the podium as we speak. Perhaps in a short while from now, we are going to be seeing the Prime Minister himself perform yoga as everyone else. Their present is already on the yoga mats.
Distinguished participants, yoga masters, brothers and sisters, all of those watching on web TV and joining us today, namaste. A very warm welcome to everyone. Happy International Day of Yoga 2023. This is the time that we've all been waiting for. The time has come for me to share how much we're deeply honored. We're so privileged to have with us today none other than the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, a distinguished world leader and an ardent yoga practitioner. I'd like to remind everyone that it is Prime Minister Modi ji himself back in December 2014 who introduced the idea of establishing World Yoga Day to the UN General Assembly. A record number of 175 member states recognized yoga's universal appeal and adopted the landmark resolution proclaiming June 21 as International Yoga Day, the day of the summer solstice here in the north. So every 21 of June is World Yoga Day. This day provides people everywhere across the globe, all of us and everyone watching, an opportunity to reflect upon the countless benefits of practicing yoga. Indeed, an invaluable gift in the world from India's ancient tradition. We thank the Honorable Prime Minister of India for this notable initiative, which is now celebrated worldwide with enthusiasm and vigor. I will now begin the official part of today's event by requesting Ambassador Ruchira Kamboj, India's permanent representative to the United Nations, to the stage to deliver her opening remarks.
Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji, Mr. President of the General Assembly, Madam Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Mayor, distinguished ambassadors, distinguished guests, and all my dear friends and colleagues from this wonderful audience. Today's celebration is indeed very, very special. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lead us in doing yoga here at the United Nations lawns. To put matters in perspective, it was under his leadership and under his guidance that 21st June was declared as International Yoga Day, and it is only fitting, therefore, that the inspiration behind the idea is with us today in this scenic, multicultural setting of the United Nations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is truly beautiful to see so many around the world gather in solidarity for yoga. It is not living with the burden of weight or the lightness of oblivion. It is a choice made with balance, an idiosyncratic beauty, timeless throughout the progress of humanity. Yoga has endured. It is truth beyond articulation, wisdom beyond time. I hope all of you will cherish 21st June this year and hold it close to your hearts, today and forever. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Kamboj, for your remarks. It's my turn now to invite the Honorable President of the UN General Assembly, Mr. Chaba Karoshi, for the stage.
Honorable Prime Minister,
Madam Deputy Secretary General, Mr. Mayor, Madam Ambassador, dear friends, Namaste. Yoga is a way of uniting mind and body, and also the environment and us. The most memorable university lectures I attended as a student many years ago were on cultural traditions of ancient Eastern civilizations. They helped me understand that we are part of nature, despite regarding ourselves as aristocratically detached from other creatures. I also learned that the energies in the universe and inside us abide by the same law, a desire to achieve balance. Yoga changes our physical performance, but more importantly, it can spark in us different mental and intellectual performance. With the control that it teaches over ourselves, we learn how to make change and impact. Since that university lecture, I've been an admirer of yoga. I'm very proud of my daughter, who has already reached a high level of practice and is continuing her journey. Thanks to her, I understand better yoga's ethical guide. The guide, which includes the principle of non-stealing, non-greed, non-hoarding, and non-violence. In other words, yoga's ethical guide to living is a guide to sustainability, not overusing resources that belong to all of us, not prioritizing short-term gains over planetary boundaries, and working for transformation. Our world needs balance, self-control, and creativity, just as it needs recognition of moral responsibilities and cherishing peace and justice. There are many ways to approach these aims. Yoga is one of the means, for which I have a special respect. I'm happy to be here with all of you today, but let me apologize in advance. I am not a yoga practitioner, and the positions which you will show might look very different from what I end up doing. Still, I'm here with an open heart and open mind. Thank you very much. With an open heart and open mind. Thank you very much.
Thank you, President Kuroshi, for highlighting the transformative power of yoga and in such a very personal way. At this time, I would now ask that Mayor Eric Adams, the mayor of the city of New York, please take the stage.
To Prime Minister Modi, to President of the General Assembly, to Deputy Secretary General, to Your Excellencies, to the Ambassador, to all of you, do not miss the significance of this moment. New York City is the largest and most important city in America. As I stand before you as the mayor of that city, I share with you in a clear and a universal tone that we are no longer focused solely on the physical body, but the anatomy of our spirit. For far too long, we have separated what our needs are emotionally, spiritually, and physically. We are going to go to the root causes of that which troubles many of us from how we interact to the food we eat, to allowing our children to have breathing exercises in the morning as they start their school day, to challenge the mental health issues that's impacting us. But there's a larger challenge for all of us. What we do on the mat in practicing yoga must become what we do on the streets and in our countries. We cannot become universally connected through the yellow mats we lay on, but disconnected as we move through our communities. Use the spirit and emotions of yoga to challenge and fight against war, to fight against gender oppression, to fight against violence, to fight against the lack of clean water, to fight against the food insecurity, to fight against the destruction of our planet. Our connectivity is not only how we're connected to our families and our parents. We have two mothers. One gave birth to us and one sustains us. Yoga keeps us connected to both mothers and connected to each other. This International Yoga Day is an international call for us to stand up for humankind across the globe and all living beings. I'm proud to be here, and I'm proud to symbolically represent this city as stating the International Yoga Day is an international call that we will be a leader here in New York City, as you are a leader in your own environments. Thank you for allowing me to rejoice with you today.
Thank you, Mayor Adams, for spotlighting how yoga is integral to the anatomy of one's spirit. We appreciate that perspective and input. I'd like now to go to the video message of the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres, who is not available to be with us in person, but is here in spirit. Please let us go to the videotape.
Happy International Day of Yoga. I want to recognize Prime Minister Modi for all he has done to promote understanding of yoga and its many benefits. Yoga unites. It unites body and mind, humanity and nature, and millions of people across the globe for whom it is a source of strength, harmony and peace. In a dangerous and divided world, the benefits of this ancient practice are particularly precious. Yoga offers a haven of calm. It can reduce anxiety and promote mental well-being. It helps us to develop discipline and patience. It connects us to our planet, which so badly needs our protection. And it reveals our common humanity, helping us to understand that despite our differences, we are one. On this International Day of Yoga, let us embrace the spirit of unity and resolve to build a better, more harmonious world for people, planet and ourselves.
Friends, it is one of the deepest honors and privileges of my life to extend a heartfelt welcome. A heartfelt welcome and an invitation to no one else but the Honorable Prime Minister of India, Modi ji. I ask that on this auspicious occasion that he join us and that he address us with his remarks. Let us give him a very, very warm welcome.
Thank you. Your Excellency, Chaba Koroshi, President of UN General Assembly, Her Excellency Amina Mohammed, Deputy Secretary General of the Union, His Excellency Eric Adams, Mayor of New York, and my dear friends from all over the world. Namaskar. Friends, on this fine morning, we are gathered here at the United Nations, at the meeting point of entire humanity. In this wonderful city of New York, I know many of you have come here from far away. Most of you have woken up before sunrise and made the effort to come here. I am delighted to see you all, and I thank you all for coming. Friends, I am told that almost every nationality is represented here today. And what an amazing cause to bring us all together, yoga. Yoga means to unite. So your coming together is an expression of another form of yoga. I remember about 9 years ago, right here at the UN, I had the honor to propose celebrating the International Day of Yoga on 21st June. It was wonderful to see the entire world come together to support the idea back then. I just paid respect to the brave UN peacekeepers. In 2015, I had called for a new memorial to be built at the UN in their memory. And last week, the whole world joined hands with India to make this reality soon. As the largest troop contributing nation, we are grateful to all nations for their expression of support to this noble cause. Last year, the entire world came together to support India's proposal to celebrate 2023 as the International Year of Millets. Millets are a superfood. They promote holistic health and are good for environment too. And today, it is wonderful to see the entire world come together again for yoga. Friends, yoga comes from India, and it is a very old tradition. But like all ancient Indian traditions, it is also living and dynamic. Yoga is free from copyright, free from patents, and free from royalty payments. Yoga is adaptable to your age, gender, and fitness level. Yoga is portable. You can do it at home, or at work, or in transit. Yoga is flexible. You can practice it alone or in a group, learn from a teacher, or be self-taught. Yoga is unifying. It is for everyone, for all ethnicities, for all faiths, and for all cultures. Yoga is truly universal. Friends, when we do yoga, we feel physically fit, mentally calm, and emotionally content. But it is not just about doing exercise on a mat. Yoga is a way of life, a holistic approach to health and well-being, a way to mindfulness in thoughts and actions, a way to live in harmony with self, with others, and with nature. I am delighted that many of you are working on scientifically validating different aspects of yoga. Indeed, this is the way. Friends, I know you are all keen to get started. Well, so am I. I want to thank the United Nations for hosting us here today. I am grateful to the Mayor and the City of New York for all their help and support in making this event success. And most of all, want to thank you all once again for being here today. Let us use the power of yoga not only to be healthy, happy, but also to be kind to ourselves and to each other. Let us use the power of yoga to build bridges of friendship, a peaceful world, and a cleaner, greener, and sustainable future. Let us join hands together to realize the goal of one earth, one family, one future. I conclude with a wish. Sarve bhavantu sukhinah, sarve santu niramaya. May everyone be happy. May everyone be healthy. Thank you.
Thank you, Prime Minister Modi ji, for conveying such an inspirational message to us, for elaborating more about our theme, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, and stressing how yoga is really a way of life. At this time, I request that our esteemed dignitaries please leave the stage and join us below for the yoga lesson, because we would like to start that soon. You may Friends, I'm now going to call upon yoga instructor Miss Annalise Richmond so that she can join on the stage. Quickly. We're going to prepare the stage so that we can get it ready for our yoga lesson. I've mentioned before that we'll have 6 energetic youngsters leading us along with Miss Annalise Richmond in this lesson. And we have more in the first row here on the north lawn joining us so that people behind can also follow that way too. I'm requesting that everyone stay on your yoga mat in your spot and to follow our yoga instructor and our yoga practitioners to the best of our ability. It's such a beautiful morning to have this opportunity to engage in yoga. The sun is not so strong, and we have a nice breeze coming through, which makes for a very pleasant morning for us to all share in this collective. group. I'm delighted now to hand over the floor to our accomplished yoga instructor, Miss Annalise Richmond, who will now start our yoga session. Thank you, Denise.
Well, that was the address of the Prime Minister, that ceremony, the celebration of the International Yoga Day at the United Nations headquarters in New York during the state visit of the Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the United States. We have our guests as well who are with us on the broadcast. We're going to stay with these pictures. Dignitaries, the Prime Minister, who's part of those celebrations at the United Nations headquarters. This is a day to celebrate our history, our culture, and the science of yoga that has been celebrated for decades across the world, but not with the same fervor and spirit like we've seen in the last 9 years ever since. The 21st of June has been declared as the International Yoga Day. With us on the broadcast is Lovely Singh, who's a yoga expert. I also have Ray Locker, who's a senior journalist and author, joining us live from Washington, D.C. Ray, coming to you first. This was a message from India that the Prime Minister has reiterated. And this is a message that has often been reiterated on the global platform. The world is one family, and culturally, in terms of the traditions, the centuries-old traditions like yoga, this is a way of showing the world perhaps how you can strike the right balance.
Well, it's refreshing that we have a world leader bringing something other than the military or talk of war to the world stage. As a yoga practitioner myself, I'm happy to see this. I actually did not know that today was International Yoga Day.
Yeah.
And I think Prime Minister Modi is bringing a welcome message to the world stage.
Ray, I want to talk to you a bit more about, you said you're a yoga practitioner yourself. The people in the West, the Western world, has been receptive to yoga for a very long time. Various, yoga gurus from India, whether it was B.K. Iyengar, Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, and various others have taken this knowledge and science to different parts of the world, including America. How importantly, with what kind of keenness and curiosity is yoga really seen, if I talk about America?
Well, I think more and more people see it as a very healthy way to live. It's great for your physical and mental health. It increases your flexibility. I think more people realize that. I think, 20, 30 years ago, it had kind of a hippy-dippy reputation, but not anymore. It's, it's something that all sorts of people do. American football players do it, you name it. So people see the physical and mental benefits of it more and more each day.
The physical and the mental benefits more and more each day. And if you ever, bother to read the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, there's so much more than the Ashtanga Yoga or the physical yoga, which is much talked about, which is equally important. Lovely Singh is also with us on the broadcast. She is with us in the studio. Lovely, I must say it's a very good day to talk about the heritage and the tradition of yoga in this country. It's great that it has become fashionable. It has become a cool thing these days to be a yoga practitioner.
Our hands in our
yes,
lap.
Actually, in fact, I would like to add that,
When you feel ready,
as you said, that now I'm very happy that it's the 9th International Yoga Day, and we all, especially not just elderly people, but the youngster and the children, they are showing their interest to yoga because, they are finding it interesting. Now there are very different types of yoga, which, which is very, very important for the focus, for the concentration. So even the parents are realizing that how important it is, and the schools and the colleges, they all are introducing the yoga into it. And I would like to say that whether you are a journalist or a teacher or a professor or you are in your banking profession, it helps everywhere because it's not just what you do 1 hour on the mat. It's the way you live your life, it's the way you think, it's the way how you're talking to people, how you behave with others. So it starts with personal, definitely with your physical health and your mental health, and you will not realize that in just few months you start becoming a happier person, and in fact it helps the people around you, and it's a good bonding for the family, and then we help for the society. So now especially these days, what I would like to add, it has become very, very important that you are fit and you are living your life without pain. So we have to make sure that
Absolutely, and the Yoga Sutra of Patanjali, it is asked in the Yoga Sutra that what is yoga, And Patanjali goes on to explain that it's Chitti Vritti Nirodh, which means that you know how to control your mind or regulate your mind, your thoughts, your feelings, and align them with your breath. It is a science which is not just about the body fitness, but it aligns your mental fitness and your physical health at the same time. It is said that if you're a yoga practitioner, various other modern day problems that you encounter like anxiety, depression that has become an endemic and perhaps pandemic to the entire world, there is increasing research to make these claims and make it more evident that this is perhaps the way that the world needs to follow. I want to cut across to Ray Locker as well. He's a senior journalist and author from Washington, D.C. Ray, the International Yoga Day, as we were talking about, the soft power of India, the cultural power of India, has always been something that has helped the Indians on the global platform. The manner in which Prime Minister has taken yoga and various other facets of Indian tradition to the global platform, highlighted them, accentuated them, celebrated them, has only helped the branding of India as this cultural icon.
Well, I think you're exactly right. I mean, nobody's really afraid of India on the world stage, unlike other places like the United States or Russia. India is projecting a positive message for the most part. And if yoga is at the forefront of that message, so much the better. And I think as it becomes or has become the world's most populous nation, that's a great place to be positioned in the world.
This crucial visit of the Prime Minister, Ray, talking a bit about the visit of the Prime Minister and how it is going to pan out to be, how critical and crucial it's going to be. Not just, a cultural event like the International Yoga Day at the UN headquarters and the kind of messaging which is happening, but there are various other important engagements lined up as, this is a state visit, including critical areas of cooperation between the Prime Minister and the American counterpart.
Yeah, it's a major event. He's getting a state visit, which is always important. It's a sign of a nation's importance to the United States. Some of the concerns that people in this country have had with, what they see as a rise of autocracy in India in some places. I mean, those have kind of receded in the background because the U.S.-Indian partnership is huge. It's only gotten stronger. I mean, the Indian diaspora community in the United States is growing and growing and becoming increasingly important. And the business relationship between the United States and India and companies in the two countries is more and more important. And I think this visit is another reflection of that. I mean, we've seen it with, President Trump. We saw it with President Obama as they met with Prime Minister Modi. And with each successive visit, the importance of this relationship has only grown.
The importance of the relationship has only grown, and US, of course, has always seen India as a long-term ally and partner, but the kind of investments and the kind of wooing that we're seeing right now is also very critical, considering in mind that the geopolitical equations are changing. Dr. Rahul Chandola, who's a cardiothoracic surgeon and founder at IHLD, is also joining us on the broadcast. Dr. Chandola, thank you so much for speaking with us, and a very happy International Yoga Day to you as well. You're a doctor, you're a practicing surgeon. I want to know from you, what is the evidence that exists in modern medicine as far as yoga is concerned, its benefits is concerned? We hear about so many ailments, heart diseases these days, and lifestyle problems which are seen in young people. People who should be healthy and ordinarily should not have a heart problem or a diabetes issue. But that's the issue that relatively young people of today's generation are facing. How important is yoga in today's day and age?
So, good evening. Actually, I'm a heart-lung specialist, and I can tell you one thing for sure, that yoga is really helping for all.
So there's a problem of echo with your audio. We'll just try and fix that problem. I'll ask my team to just speak to you and get that fixed. Meanwhile, let me cut across to Lovely as well, who's with us on the broadcast. Lovely, you're a yoga practitioner. For how long have you been doing it? And in your own personal life, what kind of changes have you seen?
Yes, so I would like to say that professionally, I'll say it's been 13 to 14 years, but I will say that without realizing, we don't even understand that even when you are, every human being is, they are born, even the babies, the position they are lying down, you see that they are actually doing yoga. And, in fact, one of the studies says that a human being can stay without food and water for a day, but not without a stretch. So, even when you're yawning, it's a stretch. And, you're sitting for long, you feel like doing something, you feel like opening your back. That everything what you do is a stretch. So it's not about what you do, as I mentioned earlier, it's not what you do on the mat, but what you do and how you live your life. So it's all about the lifestyle changes. So for me, doing yoga, it definitely started with the physical changes in me. I felt that, my digestion have become better, and, your metabolic system changes and your immunity. The way with every season change, you fall sick. So it started with that. And slowly, gradually, you are so much into love with it that you start enjoying the breathing. Once you connect your physical body with the mental body along with the breath, then you kind of it becomes very easy for you to deal with any type of situation. Like if there is one situation, then 10 person have different views. So your view towards the situation changes. You become a calmer person. You do
a more aware person.
Yes.
A more aware person. And it's an interesting point you make, because when you actually read about different kind of yoga abhyas and that exist, Sahaj Yoga, I believe, is a very, very important part of today's day and age. And as you rightly said, even when you're sitting or a baby is lying down, that's yoga. There are different kind of postures which have been driven from the animal kingdom, from different things that you see around, which are part of the practice. I want to cut across to Dr. Chandola. I believe he's back with us on the broadcast. Dr. Chandola, if you can hear me, how crucial and critical is the practice of yoga in today's day and age? And more importantly, is there actual evidence that exists? This is the age of modern medicine, and everything needs to be corroborated with evidence, research and data.
Absolutely. See, I'm a heart and lung specialist, I'm a heart surgeon basically, and deal with heart patients and lung patients on a day-to-day basis. And what we have done is we have incorporated yoga into our cardiopulmonary rehabilitation program. We've been running this rehabilitation program for a while now, and what we see that patients who receive this rehabilitation that has got yoga incorporated into it, they have better earlier recovery. They also have got better blood pressures, better sugar control, and the feeling of well-being, and also ambulation is relatively earlier than the patients who do not enroll into the rehabilitation program. So as a part of the post-operative recovery, incorporating yoga is a phenomenal thing. We have seen that time and time again, and I can vouch for that. The other thing is, we all know yoga has got there is a science behind that. It's not that, yoga has been there just like that. There's a science behind that. It has been shown that yoga, people, the volunteers who are doing yoga regularly, they've got higher levels of serotonin secreted in the body. The serotonin is a happy hormone, keeps you happy, keeps your mood elevated. At the same time, the response to the stress, that also gets modulated. The cortisol levels are much lesser as opposed to the people who do not do yoga. So the stress response is a little different in people who are doing yoga on a regular basis. At the same time, yoga, people who do yoga, it has been seen that the blood is thinned out in these patients, which is actually what is required for patients who have got heart diseases.
Okay.
So it thins the blood. It also increases the pumping. While you're doing yoga with different postures, different poses, what happens is all those muscles of the lower limb, upper limb muscles,
So I'm glad to hear it from you, Dr. Chandola, that there is ample evidence. And I do have people in my family, my own parents, with heart conditions or with a blood pressure issue. And there is significant improvement in their overall activity, along with the treatment that they're getting, if they are yoga practitioners, or if there are simple pranic kriyas, that they indulge into. If you talk about pranayam, dhyan, and the basic things that even elderly can indulge into. Lovely. Each time we think about yoga, the imagination is of a complicated posture that you must get right. The social media is filled with so much information and misinformation at the same time that a lot of people who want to start yoga don't know where to really start from.
Yeah, in fact, even I will agree with this, what you're saying, that, now because of so much of social media and all that, people actually, they want to do yoga, but they don't know what to start from and how to start from. So for them, what I will suggest is the best way is first make sure, because it's also about the discipline. So, Atha Yoga Anushasanam, that means you have to first discipline yourself. So, first make sure that you promise yourself, that you're going to give 15 to 20 minutes minimum for you every day. So, that's what we can start from. Okay. And then, and along with that, also I will make sure that breathing is very important, and there are certain breathings which has no restriction. Like one of that is Anulom Vilom. Yeah. So even the problem with people problematic with heart and diabetes, even they can do it. Okay. And so Anulom Vilom you can start with.
So that's how you can start, as Lovely Singh is pointing out. We also have G. Parasarthi, who's a former diplomat, joining us on the broadcast. Good evening, sir. Thank you so much for speaking with us. It's the International Yoga Day, so a very happy International Yoga Day to you as well. We heard the address of the Prime Minister at the UN headquarters. There's a ceremony which is underway right now. The Prime Minister is practicing yoga with hundreds of other people who are present there. As we talk about the visit of the Prime Minister, the soft power, the culture of India, which has always been respected across the world, that prowess is being displayed far more emphatically during this visit.
Well, yes, let me put it this way. I could never understand what yoga was all about till I started about 15 years ago. Yeah. 12 years to be precise. I'm now 83 and I do it thrice or four times in a week. And it has really changed my life. I think that's the best example I can give. But more importantly, I think we should understand that we lived under colonial rule or foreign occupation for a very long time. This is an art and exercise which goes back centuries. It is a part and soul of what is now India. But it is, you must also realize that internationally, Pakistan, for example, says this is a religious exercise. What has been or is being achieved by Mr. Modi is to establish that your religion is irrelevant, your color is irrelevant, whether you're European, African, Indian, anything, Asian. So what is important is what India has produced by way of this for everybody, free of cost, until you have an instructor for a couple of years. I had one for 10. Yeah. This keeps you fit in a lifetime. And it is subject to Mother Nature. So Indian civilization is represented here. It is an exercise in silence. It is an exercise in harmony. And it is an exercise we take really for the welfare of humanity at large. And I think, as I said, in many parts of Europe, the message has gone through. I myself lived in America during my service days. Right. But there was no talk then of yoga. Yeah. Even I didn't perform yoga at profession. Right. But you just remember one thing. You are in the United Nations. And this is in the United States. The most populous democratic country in the world, which is the US. And the going into a civilizational practice, which is notably and almost exclusively Indian, because it started there, it originated there.
Mr. Parasarthi, I do want to talk to you about this because you've been a diplomat, you've seen how it is, and no doubt yoga was always about India, its culture, thousands of years of old heritage and science that has existed, which has got now the place and appreciation that it deserves. I don't want you to comment on what various political parties are saying about it, but is it correct to say that yoga got the credit it deserved, but not in the way and manner like it's getting right now?
No, I would put it this way, that I would say that time had come for this to happen. Each prime minister has his own preferences and brings in his own ideas.
Yeah.
And I think in the case of Prime Minister Modi, it is something which touches the heart and soul, has touched the heart and soul of every Indian. What he has done is transform, say, this thing to conform with the saying Vasudeva Kutumbakam. All the world is one family. And therefore, he has brought this into an international forum. And the important point is here that it needs to be followed up. In the United States, yes, a lot of our Indians do it, lots of others do it. But as I said, you are going to face problems, like Pakistan saying that it is religiously oriented. But I think sensible people all across the world, especially in secular countries, whether it's India or the United States, this is a part of life. It is not a religion. It may be linked to people of our religion, but it is a way of life for yoga. For me, as I said, at the age of 83, it's a way of life for my wife.
Mr. Padsati, there's the fascinating aspect about Sanatan, or what you call Hindu religion, is the fact that it's an evolved religion. And I can tell you from law that there was a fascinating debate at the Supreme Court about whether Hinduism is a religion or it's a way of life. And there's a comment of the Supreme Court judges on this matter, and they say, well, Hinduism is less of a religion, more of a way of life, while it doesn't cease to be a religion in itself. So nobody can, I believe, deny the religious roots or the cultural roots of yoga, and proudly so. But at the same time, it's an exercise which is for the entire world. The message that the Prime Minister reiterated, that the world is one family, and yoga is for the overall well-being for anyone who wants to practice it.
Yes, but I would rather say that, because you do have people practicing other religions, instead of linking it in foreign countries to religion, you relate it to modern health and tell people of the world this was evolved in India thousands of years ago. So it is a contribution of India and Indian civilization. But the moment you bring in religion, you're going to ask for trouble with other countries, notably in the Islamic world. So what Mr. Modi has done, he's not spoken of the Hindu religion. He has spoken about the Indian way of life, what our forefathers did to keep healthy.
Absolutely.
Which was, interestingly, if you carry out a scientific analysis of yoga, you will find that it is really tuning you up for health. As I said, I started in my 70s. I'm now in my 80s. And my wife and I, studiously every morning, I go for a walk or we do yoga.
I will ensure my parents are listening to this, because they often tell me that sometimes it's very late to start and we can't do much about it. Dr. Chandola, coming to you.
I started at 70.
You started at 70. So they clearly have age on their side in a certain way to start that. Dr. Chandola, I'll come back to you before I take in a word from Lovely as well. The issue of heart diseases, especially amongst the young people in India, we hear so many cases these days about young people developing heart ailments and conditions, people who have no history in the background. And this is a lifestyle problem, the high stress levels that everybody talks about. And for that particular reason, it becomes more contextual, more important, and perhaps a more pressing need. It should be a part of your lifestyle in some way or the other.
Right. Absolutely. So we these days we are hearing a lot about, heart disease in young Indians. Indians especially are more prone to heart disease. And the younger population is getting more of that, You'll be surprised to know that, 25% of all heart attacks, in all comers, they are under 40 years of age.
Yeah.
So this was not the case 20 years ago, when we used to have people with the coronary artery disease used to be in people who are above 50, and we never used to operate on patients, who were less than 50 years of age. Now, every month, if we are operating 100 cases, there are at least 7-8 cases, 7-8 patients who are less than 40 years in age. So this is clearly a very disturbing trend, and a lot of it is because of many reasons that we know. It's a stressful situation for the younger generation these days, very competitive, so stress levels are very high, dietary habits, and also the sedentary lifestyle, especially after the COVID. people have started working from home. They're not working out that aggressively that used to be the case before. So all of these factors have led.
But Dr. Chandola, I often hear of cases of people having a heart attack while gymming. I mean, I'm not trying to create any kind of phobia while gymming. I gym myself. But that being said, there are various cases where you hear that people have been gymming extensively, they led a healthy lifestyle, and yet these problems occur, especially the heart diseases.
Right. Yeah, it does happen, and we often hear these cases, the case reports where somebody's doing some exercise outdoors and people are just dropping dead. So it is happening, and especially after the COVID, this phenomena is more commonly seen. What happened is, COVID has been shown to have a pro-inflammatory state, in the vessels, and the effect has been seen up to 18 months after getting COVID infection. So as a result, you must have heard of these cases more often. When the COVID was at its peak, up to 18 months, these patients, especially those who had these moderate to severe COVID infection, they would have more coronary events, and people of all ages, they were dropping dead, they were having issues with their heart.
Post-COVID, it's all the more important to have a full, healthy lifestyle. Exercising is important. Mindfulness, lovely, is another aspect we must talk about. I hear of a lot of top companies in US, in Europe, where you have mindfulness rooms these days. And, even in leadership position, there is a lot of stress these days on honing the skills, on teaching meditation, science, practicing the art of mindfulness. It seems like that in certain ways, the West has always recognized the importance of yoga far quickly than India did. This was our science. We should have embraced it far more keenly than we have. But the West was also very quick to lap up to the knowledge that existed.
Yeah, in fact, yes, even I will agree with it. But the thing is that, in fact, the realization of Indian and Indian society that they have been doing yoga was late. So, but they have always been doing it. And, we have the way we live, everything is about, it's not about just how you do the yogic posture, but it's also about how your lifestyle is, the way you eat. Because, yoga also talk about that you should be having a sattvic bhojan, which is mainly in India, and how you should be starting your day early in the morning, and, late 7 in the evening is the last time you should end your meal. So it's about everything, but, it's all about how we project that this is our strength. So projection has been, it's been 9 years, but we have always been recognized its benefit. But now, still, we need to work on it so that every child in every family, whether it's elderly people or the youngster, whether they are doing it for their concentration, whether they are doing it for, giving quality time to their family, whether it's for anxiety, whether it's for their physical health. But when we talk about mindfulness, that is also very important aspects. That what is mindfulness? That we have to try to learn to live in the moment. Not, like I'm repeating it again and again, not only when you are on the mat. You have to be aware of each and every moment. Whether you are cooking, it's a kind of yoga. Whether you are, it's in our culture. When we go to temples, it's the time when you spend with yourself, analyzing yourself, where you are going wrong, which direction you should be taking. So it's all about being with you. So yes, that's what mindfulness is all about.
And there are so many aspects of yoga that I believe a 1 hour program or hours of programming is not enough. It's a science. There are sutras of Patanjali from where this entire science has emanated, and there have been different authors, writers, yoga practitioners who have written about it. They have taken this science to different parts of the country, to different parts of the world. B.K. Iyengar, for example, had thousands of disciples, especially in China. So there are a lot of people in China who practice yoga and are ardent followers of B.K. Iyengar, one of the leading yoga, yoga practitioners across the world, who wrote multiple books and educated the world about the benefits of Ashtanga Yoga. I want to cut across once again back to Ray Locker. who's with us on the broadcast. Ray, we are having a discussion here about the practice of yoga, mindfulness, how it is important. With you, I want to once again touch upon the various aspects of the visit of the Prime Minister. And once again, when that meeting with Joe Biden happens, and there's also a state dinner which is all set to be hosted, important security deals on the table, the positioning of India and the manner in which the US sees India. It has always been the long-term investment for the United States, especially India, and the manner in which the engagement has been with the foreign policy seeing its own highs during the Indo-US nuclear deal. But it has been a warm relationship between the two sides. Is it likely to get better?
Oh, I think it only has room to grow and get better.
Yep.
That's because there are more and more Indian Americans living, Indians living in this country. The relationship between them and this country is stronger. They are becoming more and more important parts of the United States. And as that happens, people think more about where they came from. Indian Americans are respected. That's something that has grown over time. And so, India is seen as a beneficial place, a good place to be from. And, just the whole relationship continues to get better. I've been watching it for a long time and how U.S. leaders view India. And now with Modi, despite some concerns that people may have with some of his policies at home, India is coming more and more into its own. So, you look back 50 years ago, the relationship between President Nixon and Prime Minister Indira Gandhi, that relationship was not good. And we use India took a second place to Pakistan because Nixon wanted to reach out to China through Pakistan. And now, those days seem like ancient history. And so I think this relationship only has room to grow. It's on its way up, and I don't really see the limit.
Absolutely. Let's try and dip into the event, which is happening at the United Nations headquarters in New York.
Become aware of any thoughts that are floating through the mind. Do not resist any thoughts. Let them come. Now you are in harmony with the thoughts, with the mind. And become aware of any feelings, pleasant or unpleasant. Accept the feelings as they are. You are peace. You are joy. Breathe in and let go. Again, become aware of your feelings. Become aware of your thoughts. Become aware of your whole body. And let's immerse ourselves in the sounds.
Well, that's the ceremony which is underway, the International Yoga Day celebrations. Hundreds of people have gathered. You also have Prime Minister Narendra Modi, where it's a meditation session right now, which is going on, teaching them to focus on their thoughts. Mindfulness, that's what we were talking about. Once again, cutting across to the guests who continue to be with us on the broadcast. Dr. Chandola is also with us on the show. Dr. Chandola, once again coming back to you. Talking about the health benefits, especially India, it's the young population we are talking about. The country which is predominantly young, which has age on its side. But lifestyle diseases seem to be taking a toll as far as the overall health indices is concerned. And one wonders, when this younger generation is going to hit the late 40s and 50s, what would the national health really look like?
Yeah. So we already have a burden of cardiovascular disease in our country.
Yep.
So Indians globally, are having more prevalence of cardiovascular disease. As a reference, the global cardiovascular disease incidence, is around 235 per million population. But in India, it's already 275, so it's already more than, the world average. And the reasons are many, genetically we have more predisposition. There are the dietary habits have changed in the last decades or so. The stress that the people nowadays are working in the corporates and the private sector. People are changing jobs. They are subjected to, undue competition and anxieties at workplace.
Yeah.
All of that is taking toll. And ultimately, more and more younger people are getting affected by the cardiovascular diseases. Yeah.
More and more younger people are getting affected. As I'm about to close the show, I want to go up to Mr. G. Parsarthi as well. Mr. Parsarthi, once again coming to you and talking about this crucial visit of the Prime Minister. What is there to look forward to, and more importantly, the facet of culture, the cultural prowess of India. How much does that really help India when it comes to the real politic, when it comes to the entire posturing of India? You've taken our country to international platforms. How has that helped during your career?
Look, I've even served in Washington.
Yeah.
My daughter lives in America. The fact of the matter is, we are now to be seen as a civilization, not as a Tamil or an Andhra or belonging to a particular religion. We are Indian and we are unique in the sense that we are an old civilization. We have absorbed so much, and yet we have learned to live in harmony.
Right.
Now, that is the message which gets across. When I was in America, what I found was the Indians really, it did not matter what religion they belonged to or what caste they belonged to.
Yes.
When they were in America, they're Indians.
The civilizational message, Mr. Parsarthi, I guess is going to be my takeaway as I wrap this debate. I thank all our guests for joining us on the broadcast. It's a wrap from mine. Plain Speak on the other side.
Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. On the occasion of International Day of Yoga, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as you can see, is performing yoga at the UN office in New York. It's the 9th year since UN recognized June 21 as the International Day of Yoga through a resolution in 2014. Now PM Modi will also leave for capital Washington, DC, where he's scheduled to meet Indian CEOs and President Joe Biden. Remember, earlier today, the Prime Minister had an interaction with a diverse group of eminent American academics and various fields such as agriculture, marketing, health, science and technology. Elon Musk, the CEO of Tesla, also had a meeting with the PM in New York and praised him for his support towards new companies, ensuring their alignment with India's interests. In fact, he called himself a fan of Modi. Prime Minister Modi's visit holds immense diplomatic significance and represents the highest form of exchange between the two countries. While Prime Minister Modi has made several official visits to the US in the past, including participating in multilateral engagements like the Quad Leaders Summit, this particular visit holds a special distinction as it is his first state visit. But there are some usual suspects who are trying to accuse PM Modi of violating human rights and would be boycotting his upcoming speech at the US Congress. Are these usual suspects who are up in arms against the Prime Minister trying to malign India as well against facts? Haven't all of these charges, especially treatment of minorities in India, already been proved to be malicious and motivated? We will take that question to a special guest joining us in just a bit. But take a look at these visuals from the UN headquarters at New York. Prime Minister Narendra Modi leading the yoga session. It's been almost an hour. It's been participated by representatives from 195 countries. Of course, we've seen in the years gone by what a big occasion the Yoga Day has become and how many more people have accepted yoga as something incrementally improving in their lives. The event was also attended by top UN officials and envoys from across the world. Prominent names like Richard Gere, Jay Shetty, Vikas Khanna, Ricky Cage, Falguni Shah, Mary Milburn and more attended the event. A special guest is now joining us. Professor Salvatore Babones, American sociologist who has called out global indices that malign India, especially on the issue of minority treatment. In the past has called out, quote, Indian intellectuals to be dishonest, is joining me on the show. Salvatore, You met the Prime Minister when he was on a visit to Australia. This time he's on a state visit to the US. Give me a sense, of course, of, everything that is going on as far as this American visit is concerned. Let me take that as an opening comment.
Well, I think Mr. Modi is following me around the world. I'm here in New York right now, and who should pop up but the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi. So it's a great pleasure as an American to be hosting Mr. Modi in my home country. Of course, there's a lot of excitement here, and I think that excitement is not limited to the Indian-American community, though that's, of course, where it is strongest. There's really a fantastic welcome for Mr. Modi from the business community, and I think that's because of India. It's not because of who Mr. Modi is, it's because of what India is and how important it's become to American businesses.
Right. I do want to talk about this new article of yours that is already being talked about quite a bit. In the past, you have referred to the Pew Research and talked about how people themselves, especially those from the minorities like Muslims and Christians in India, talk highly about their quality of life. Yet we see, and it is happening even as I speak, there are a couple of congresswomen, for example, who are up in arms about the human rights record and treatment of minorities in India, and they're calling for a boycott of the Prime Minister's speech at Congress. I want to begin by taking your outline of that, piece you have written, where you have once again highlighted how India is badly rated in press and religious freedom indices, but against evidence.
Yes, very much against the evidence. If we want to know about religious freedom, international religious freedom, it's really much better to ask actual people whether or not they can practice their religion, instead of turning to religious leaders, NGOs, advocates. Of course, everybody wants to be able to talk to some imaginary, quote unquote, masses, but the masses can speak for themselves in a democracy, and they can speak on surveys. We have very good survey data about the status of religious minorities in India. The survey data tell us that Muslims in particular in India report facing very little discrimination. 98% report being free to practice their own religion. 89% say, quote unquote, very free to practice their religion. 99% of India's Muslims are, quote unquote, proud to be Indian. And that's a narrative that I think Indians themselves have to understand, that when we look at many international Muslim advocates who are trying to weaponize India's Muslims for their own advantage, we see a lot of complaints about the status of Muslims in India. Same thing about the status of Christians in India. Yet when we ask actual Indian Muslims, when we ask actual Indian Christians on a purely random sample basis, not going to a few leaders, but going to everybody and asking them in a random sample, are you free to practice your religion? Do you face discrimination in your country? Are you proud to be part of your country? We find that levels of discrimination and exclusion are very low, and levels of pride are very high.
Yeah. So why is it, do you feel, that despite being such a vibrant democracy, India keeps getting maligned for what is just factually incorrect? I mean, there are even exaggerations to the attempt that Muslims are losing their citizenship in India, that there is a genocide in India of the minorities. I mean, these are hyperbole of the worst kind that spread fear. But without getting into that, why do you think India continues to get maligned at the global stage, particularly with interest groups in America, for things that are not true?
The infrastructure of rankings has become thoroughly politicized. Let me just give you a detailed example from the U.S. International Religious Freedom Reports produced by the U.S. State Department. The U.S. State Department receives literally over 1,000 complaints of various kinds of hate crimes against Christians in India. Now, whether or not those are true, let's put to one side. Literally over 1,000. They receive a trickle, 4 or 5 complaints a year about hate crimes against Indian Muslims. Yet, when the report comes out from the U.S. Center for International Religious U.S. Commission for International Religious Freedom, every year they focus on the status of Muslims in India. They say, and this narrative is developed as the State Department shows that religious minorities can't worship freely in India, and then that narrative is shifted to, therefore, Muslims are at risk. And we've seen that in the confirmation hearings for Eric Garcetti, the new U.S. ambassador to India. We've seen that in the public statements of the U.S. ambassador at large for international religious freedom, Rashad Hussain, they all focus on the status of Muslims in India because they know it's an emotive issue. They know that people don't really take seriously the claim that Christians are threatened in India because India's Christians, again, actual Indian Christians in India, tell us that they're free to practice their religion. The most prominent American scholar of Christianity in India has told us again repeatedly that Christians do not face persecution in India. And so that narrative doesn't fly. So what happens? Instead, the narrative is shifted over to Muslims. And we have people like the Minnesota Representative Ilhan Omar telling us that there's going to be a Muslim genocide in India. And she repeats it over and over again on the House floor. And yet, again, all of our data tell us that this simply isn't true. Right. So what we see is outside groups. And I want to emphasize that. This is not Indian Muslims. We see outside groups, Muslims outside India, Al Jazeera, the Gulf, the whole Gulf infrastructure for public affairs, the U.S. Muslim groups who are attempting to weaponize, ironically, weaponize complaints about the treatment of Christians in India to say that India does not respect religious freedom and therefore Muslims are unsafe in India. This is a narrative that originates outside India, and unfortunately it's persuasive outside India, despite the fact that we know that Indian Muslims themselves are a, broadly speaking, happy, well-integrated, and very, very proud minority within India.
Salvatore, just stay with me. Some of the visuals that were coming in earlier were the visuals from the Prime Minister's event at the Yoga Day event at the UN headquarters. It seems like that event has now culminated, but the Prime Minister also interacted with a few young kids there. And of course, this is something that is part of India's soft power that is talked about. But today, India's soft power is also being rivaled by India's real power in real politics. And that is why India is enjoying the stature that it is, by most of these superpowers of the world, whether it's Russia, America. Of course, there are relationship struggles with China for obvious reasons because we are both contesting for the same space. So those are some visuals, final visuals of the Prime Minister's attendance at the Yoga Day event, flanked by the External Affairs Minister there and lots of young kids. Let me go back to Salvatore on the discussion that we were happening because Salvatore, since you brought up this issue of the fact that Indian intellectuals are dishonest, I want to come back to that issue because while you say global indices don't rate India fairly, one of the criticisms one can raise is that some of this hyperbole that we talked about actually comes from people within the country and some Indian Muslims, some non-Muslims as well. Do you feel that this narrative is being sustained purely because there are Indians who say this overseas?
First, I want to clarify, I have never said that India's intellectuals are dishonest. That's an interpretation others may have. What I've tried to say and tried to explain to Indians is that the negative international rankings of India actually come from India's own intellectuals. They're not imperialist Western efforts to stigmatize India. They are surveys that are done mainly of Indian intellectuals who then tell us that conditions in India are much worse than I believe they are. Now, Indian intellectuals are closer to the situation. They have a right to their own opinions. I think that many of those opinions contradict what I see as the facts on India, but I want to make no suggestion that they're being dishonest. I have every reason to believe they actually believe the appraisals they are making. I just think they're wrong. And not just I personally think they're wrong. I think the facts demonstrate that they're wrong. That is, when we take a comparative perspective and we put the facts we know about Indian democracy against the facts we know about other countries that are ranked in these global indices, we see India outperforming countries that are on a par with it on the rankings, that are being given the same ranking by India's intellectuals, yet we know objectively India is doing far better. And maybe the clearest, like the most incontrovertible example of that is safety for journalists. We know that journalists are very safe in India because we have actual data on the number of journalists who are killed in India. And the number of journalists who are killed in India is very low as a proportion or when compared to India's population. Journalists are safer in India than in just about any region of the world outside Western Europe. They're safer than in the United States. So, again, we have hard facts that contradict the subjective narrative coming from Indian intellectuals. Are the intellectuals lying? No, absolutely not. Are they wrong? Yes, I believe we have a lot of reason to think that they are.
So you're saying they may not be lying, but they're wrong, and there has been evidence presented over many, many years. Then the next question is, then are they motivated against Narendra Modi because these attacks have, reached a crescendo under him? I'll come back to that question, but just to your point about how India rates poorly versus other countries, you have pointed out in your new article that the Pew survey in the US says 80% of African Americans felt discrimination. In India, 72% of Muslims don't face a lot of discrimination, is what they have reported. There is also, of course, data that goes on to talk about how, when we compare all of these indices, India actually fares better. 46% Hispanic Americans have faced discrimination. 98% of Indian Muslims feel free to practice their religion. 42% Asian Americans faced a lot of discrimination. 95% Indian Muslims were proud to be Indians. So the statistics speak for themselves. If you don't correct this narrative by these reputed agencies and indices, does that then not point to motivation?
There is a politicization of the rankings that's absolutely clear. And I think maybe a way to explain this to an Indian audience is to think about the situation of Sikhs in India. Now, everyone in India knows someone who's Sikh. They have a pretty good finger on the pulse of Sikh opinion. And in fact, we know from survey data that not only do Sikhs report being proud to be Indian, not only are Sikhs well integrated into Indian society, but in fact, Sikhs themselves in India say that both Muslims and Hindus in India face more discrimination than Sikhs do. So we know there are very low levels of discrimination against Sikhs in India. Sikhs themselves are telling us that. Indians themselves who are not Sikh have Sikh friends. They know that. However, if you go to Canada, you'll hear about Khalistan. And you'll hear how Sikhs are facing severe repression in India. They have to flee the country. Now, Sikhs in Canada may feel that way. Some Sikhs in Australia may feel that way. But Indians are very well aware that actual Sikhs who live in India don't generally share that opinion. Now, this is what we're seeing replicated over and over again, whether it's Muslims, Sikhs, Christians. We're seeing the weaponization of India in the external arena. That is, we see Sikhs in Canada pointing to one particular incident that happens in India and trying to convince Canadians that Sikhs face terrible repression. We see Muslims in America. Very often, they're not even Indian Muslims. They're simply Muslims who have an axe to grind against India. They're from the Gulf or from, in the case of Ilhan Omar, from Somalia. They are simply themselves anti-India. And so they're trying to point to something that happens in India. And of course, in a country with more than 200 million Muslims, some Muslim in India is going to face some injustice every month, maybe every day. I mean, there are 200 million Muslims, more than 200 million Muslims. So they can always point to an example and try to weaponize it for their own political purposes.
Okay.
But again, if we're not going to be sucked into that narrative, we really have to go from this anecdotal evidence to the hard systematic facts that we have about India. And luckily, we do have those systematic facts. And the systematic facts simply tell us that India is a peaceful and relatively well-integrated country, especially when compared to the United States. I mean, any Indian who migrates to the United States instantly becomes an Asian American and instantly faces more self-reported discrimination than any minority group faces in India.
Okay, so my question is still, why is it still happening then? What are the reasons and motivations? Raymond Vickery, Senior Associate Non-Resident Wadhwani Chair in US-India Policy Studies, is joining us. I thank you, Mr. Vickery, for your patience. I want to understand from you, all of these attacks that come India's way, how much of it is fair and how much of it is being believed by Americans?
Well, thank you very much for having me. This is a very complicated subject, and as your previous guest has pointed out, there are problems with discrimination both in the United States and India. I do not think that the overall narrative in the United States is one of India discriminating in its public life.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at what's happening in the Congress, there is strong support from both Republicans and Democrats for the U.S.-India relationship. Narendra Modi, the Prime Minister, will address Congress. It's an honor given to very few. On the other hand, it is true that in both of our societies, there is deep-rooted discrimination. And we are two great democracies, and it behooves us not just to say somebody else is trying to do harm to us as a nation by pointing out discrimination, but to look and to work for what President Obama used to call a more perfect union. It is just not the case that in India you can sweep under the rug discrimination, whether it be on religious grounds, whether it be on grounds of gender against women, whether it be in regard to ethnic backgrounds from the many diverse groups in India. So I think that this is overblown for either those in India to say that somebody is out to get us because pointing these out, just as I think it's overblown for Americans to say somebody's out to get us because of our deplorable record in regard to discrimination against African Americans. You can take all kinds of surveys, and surveys are useful data points, but they're certainly not, they certainly do not encompass the entire reality. The truth is we both have imperfect, although vibrant democracies. And like peace, democracy has to be defended at all costs. I think that those of you who are in the news business in India know how important it is to be able to have press freedom. Yes, there should be more press conferences. There should be more examination from the fourth estate about governmental policies. Does that mean that that India is going down an authoritarian path? No, I don't think so. And I think we have to keep our eye on the ball.
Mr. Vikri, that was basically my point, that of course there is imperfection, and I don't think anybody is denying that there are instances of discrimination. In fact, many Hindus will report that there is discrimination against them in India. So the only issue is the way this is held against India globally. It is not held against, for example, USA that we are discussing right now. The only issue is with that. I don't think anybody is trying to suggest that it is a perfect world in India. It is a developing democracy. And there are issues that are of grave concern, but those issues exist in all democracies, maybe if not more than at the same level as India. But India, for particular reasons, gets pinned down, and I'm just trying to get into that. So, Babonis, I want to come back to you, Salvatore. Why do you think that is, that the high-pitchedness with which India gets attacked is not the same for other countries? Is it because it was easy to attack India so far? As it becomes a more vibrant democracy and a bigger democracy economically and financially, these concerns will automatically be taken care of. Your point on that, and you can respond to what Mr. Vikri said.
Mr. Vikri is absolutely right that we do want to manage discrimination down to zero. We do want to manage violence against journalists down to zero. We do want to manage violence against women down to zero. These are all things, these are all goals that we should have. That said, as a social scientist, we really have to look at things in comparative perspective. That is, I don't just want to know, has there been discrimination in India? I want to know, is the level of discrimination in India relatively low or relatively high? And that's what the survey data tells us. That is, the survey data suggests it's relatively low compared to other countries. It's never going to be zero, but we'd always like it to be lower, but we know it's relatively low. Unfortunately, these statistics, well, not these statistics, the claims of discrimination are weaponized. So, for example, if you watch Chinese television or Chinese media discourse, they will relentlessly portray a picture of America as a racist country. Any crime, any anti-Black crime in the U.S., any statement by a prominent U.S. political leader of racism in the United States is relentlessly pushed by Chinese state media to try to convince Chinese people that America is a terribly racist country. And I have to say, this is not a new tactic. This was done by the Soviet Union before 1991. It was the same tactic. Now, we're seeing those same kind of vilification of the U.S. for racism, again, in places like China, in places like the Middle East, where there's these totalitarian and authoritarian regimes that are providing wall-to-wall coverage of racism in the United States. Well, we see the same sort of thing in many media outlets, and I have to say many American media outlets about violence against Muslims in India. It's very difficult to place an op-ed with a major U.S. newspaper that presents a broadly positive picture of race relations or communal relations in India. I had a lot of difficulty getting my article published. Even the Washington Examiner pushed back against it. You know, they're not a newspaper; they are a website, but they pushed back against it and insisted that I add additional accounts of people who had said that there was anti-Muslim sentiment in India, or that the government had taken anti-Muslim actions. Now, why are they insisting that I insert that into an article that is instead presenting the facts on India? It's because this narrative has been so widely promulgated that any major U.S. media outlet feels that any article about India has to start with, there are serious allegations of anti-Muslim violence in India, you know, but there's also this positive thing.
No, but that's not the job of the press.
Reporting the positive thing.
No, but Salvatore, I'm glad you point this out. That's not the job of the press to merely report what people are saying. It is also the press's job to identify the facts on ground and try and tell people whether what people are saying is right or wrong. So if you are being, you're being insisted that you add certain allegations against India, that just brings us to feel that there is that perpetuation of that narrative is the issue here. You had a certain concern, those concerns have been looked at, those concerns can be seen in daily life here, but why perpetuate those concerns when they do not exist at that scale in India? I want final comments from both of our guests. Salvatore, I want to understand from you, how much of this is still believed by Americans as Prime Minister Modi is there in the USA and is going to address the Congress? How much of it is really believed that there is something wrong with India? And second part of that question is, as India grows economically, do you think that all of this perpetuation of this, these concerns which factually don't meet muster will reduce?
The anti-India narrative in the United States is very much an elite journalistic and academic narrative. In academia, I can assure you, it's very widespread. That said, it has not percolated into the rest of society. American society broadly is gung-ho on India. Certainly the business community is. And I think the real issue here is that people in business in America have been interacting with members of the Indian diaspora throughout their business careers. The Indian diaspora is very well represented in corporate America and in the professions. As a result, people don't take their views of India necessarily from an article in the New York Times or Washington Post. Opinion makers in the United States, or at least business people in the United States, are taking their opinions from their colleagues. And I think they're getting a very different view of India than what you would see in the New York Times and the Washington Post, and indeed sometimes in the Washington Examiner.
Mr. Bikri, your final comments on whether for claims to be believed, it is important that they are rational and they are not hyperbole. And I think that's what we're trying to get at here, that sometimes you have raised these issues to an extent which becomes so unbelievable and is, false, then takes away from legitimate concerns that one may have on India.
Well, I think the essential point here is not to subscribe to a narrative that India is being singled out and held to a higher standard than the U.S. or other nations. Your guest has just pointed out that in China, in Russia, in any of the adversarial relations, there is a narrative against the United States, much of which is deserved. The George Floyd situation, was reality. It is reality in India that in terms of immigration law, for example, that there is a different treatment between Muslims and other groups.
No, that's not
so
true. Mr. Vikri, if you just give me 30 seconds, I will explain that. Now, that's exactly the problem with the narrative here. You're referring to the CAA. The CAA was a particular legislation brought in to expedite the citizenship of minority groups in neighboring countries who've been discriminated against, once belonged to the land of India, so that they can get an expedited citizenship. I believe there's a similar parallel law that exists in the US for a certain group. When it comes to Indian citizenship per se, there is no discrimination with anybody, including Muslims coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, and Bangladesh. There is no clause that bars them or puts them at a second pedestal. I just wanted to clarify that, and this is precisely the perpetuation of not understanding this distinction which irks Indians.
No, I understand the distinction, and you are correct in what you say. But it is a fact that this particular piece of legislation treated differently people from different backgrounds. Now, why was that done? And I think India has to deal with that, just as the United States has to deal with it. But we're not going to make progress by just saying that somehow we're singled out and we're the people who are discriminated against internationally in terms of criticism. What ought to happen is we ought to apply some of the rationality which you have just indicated to try to improve the record in both societies. That's the way forward, not in trying to say that we are the ones who are being held to a higher standard and everybody else is given a pass.
Well, the reason why that is said, and I think I understand where people come from, because so many institutional discriminations in many countries are not spoken about, even half of what India gets talked about. Now, we could take it as the fact that India is more important than those countries, but I think that it also calls to question the motivations of certain groups who will not open their mouth about discriminations in China, even against Muslims, who will not talk about discriminations against Hindus and other groups in countries like Pakistan, from where Hindu and other minorities have been trickling into India for the last 75 years. I think on-ground facts need to be pointed out here. Salvatore, you wanted to come in?
Yeah, let me back this up from whataboutism to get to the issue. So with respect to Mr. Vikri, and I certainly don't mean any disrespect. I don't want this to be some kind of shouting at your argument. But the pro forma condemnation of the CAA that's kind of necessary. It's become necessary in American discourse about India. I mean, Eric Garcetti was asked to condemn the Citizenship Amendment Act when he was going through his confirmation hearings. Like, it's just become a pro forma thing, just like mentioning that Narendra Modi was once barred from the United States. It's become a pro forma thing that has to be mentioned when talking about India. Now, the Citizenship Amendment Act is, I mean, we could argue about it being a poorly drafted piece of legislation. I've made that argument myself. But the heart of it, the whole intent of it, is that people who are non-Muslim in countries that are under Sharia law can't be sent back, can't be refouled to the country where they've come from. So it's saying that if you have a Hindu refugee or Sikh refugee from Afghanistan, obviously you can't send that person back to Afghanistan, so you grant that person citizenship in India. If you have a Muslim refugee from Afghanistan, then they go into the ordinary refugee stream of asking, is this person facing persecution in Afghanistan, as opposed to generically saying that, well, because this person's Muslim, this person requires refugee status. Right. Now, I think that's overall a reasonable law. That is, a Muslim refugee from Afghanistan is not automatically a qualified refugee on account of being Muslim. That person has to present some other evidence of discrimination, whereas a Hindu or a Sikh refugee from Afghanistan obviously can't be sent back to Taliban Afghanistan.
And numbers speak.
And for that matter, Pakistan or Bangladesh, where there have been similar forms of repression. So, the law is poorly understood in the United States, and that poor understanding has been shaped by human rights organizations that I think have been mendacious in presenting the law. However, so many human rights organizations have had the same mendacious narrative about the law that it's now entered just the general consciousness of India relations as something that's a problem in India. Without really being understood.
I just want to point out, since we did touch upon the CAA, it's a recorded fact that minorities have dwindled terribly in countries like Afghanistan, Pakistan and Bangladesh that were part of India at one time, certainly Bangladesh and Pakistan that were carved out of India. It is also a reality that people are coming in from these countries, minorities from these countries are coming to India. We don't see the similar kind of exodus of minorities in India to any other country on account of discrimination. Those facts have to be acknowledged. It is also a reality that there was a pact between India and Pakistan post-partition that minorities in each country will be taken care of. Can we truly say that about Pakistan and Bangladesh? We cannot.
Let me leave this for you to discuss with
it is
Mr.
the responsibility of the Indian government to take care of those minorities who have not been taken care of in these countries. Yes, final couple of minutes, Salvatore first. Yes.
Can I leave this for you to discuss with Mr. Vickery? Unfortunately, I have to get going.
All right. Salvatore, thanks a lot for joining us. Mr. Vickery, final comments from you as well.
Well, I think that we understand the problem. I think that that India should look positively in terms of the kind of reception that is being given to the Prime Minister.
Right.
That it is not necessary that there be complete accord in regard to relations between great democracies. I think that the task ahead is to work together. Your guest has said, well, maybe the legislation is poorly drafted. Well, maybe it is, and maybe that can be improved.
Okay.
But the United States is not in any way, shape, or form singling out India as opposed to other countries.
Okay, fair enough. No, the
China,
allegation is not against United States administration. It is purely against certain groups and agencies and bodies.
Well, we certainly have our share of Christian nationalists in this country who want to see exclusion from public life of people who don't agree with Christian nationalism. That is something that we have to deal with in the United States.
Okay.
India has its share of those who would not subscribe to democratic norms, to human rights, to the kind of democracy that we aspire to. That doesn't mean that if there is criticism that involves some of that, that there is some sort of rupture in terms of the common values between the United States and India. And that is what this trip is all about,
Absolutely.
in my view.
Absolutely. And we do hope that those shared values and interests will ensure that, all of these issues can be spoken about without branding anyone and without insisting that when you talk about a certain country, certain issues need to be mentioned each and every time. We certainly look forward to what the Prime Minister's message at the US Congress will be and how it is received. Mr. Vickery, I do thank you as well for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, interesting conversation on the sidelines of the Prime Minister's visit. But coming up after a short break, we also have a conversation lined up with one of the men and women who met Prime Minister Modi as he interacted with several dignitaries from various fields. American scientist Dr. Peter Hotez is joining us.
The main message, which is that urbanization is not a problem, it's an opportunity. And I take it this is a slogan that he's used before. So for me, a good day is when I learn something, and I learned a bunch about what India is doing. India could really show the world how to do it right.
My colleague Abhishek joins us this morning from the newsroom to prepare you, our audiences, with all that it is you need to know to understand the meetings that are taking place. Abhishek, good morning. Abhishek, one expert summarized the next 3 days in a single sentence. He said that the goal for both Prime Minister Modi and for the US President Joe Biden is to create a balanced security equation in Asia long term. Do you agree with that?
Of course, because having a hawkish stance is not going to work, and with the kind of challenges that the unipolarity of world to some extent has received in the recent years, having a practical approach is something that USA also needs to understand, and why USA is coming closer to India has also a lot to do with the facing with the geopolitical realities that are coming from China, that are coming from Russia, and that are also coming from other economies, other emerging economies. So clearly, and we have seen experts, like just recently we were listening those remarks by the experts with whom Prime Minister had a meeting, and they were expressing various opinions on the geopolitical issues, how the Indian economy has worked in the last several years, and what Prime Minister Modi's vision has been even before he was the Prime Minister of India, and how did he look at the problems of urbanization and as an opportunity, and what all needed to do to continue that robust economic growth that India is currently very much on. So clearly, all those things are being talked about in USA right now, and Prime Minister Modi is interacting with people from all walks of life.
Okay. Abhishek, I now want to understand from you, much attention has been paid to the fact that this is an official state visit. The Prime Minister has travelled to the United States 7 times in the past, but this is the first time it's been accorded that level in terms of diplomatic relations. Can you just explain to our audiences why an official state visit is so important?
So, Toya, we have talked about it earlier also, but for our audience, it is said that a state visit used to be extended to the most powerful leader or the supreme leader of any country back in the era of when the democracies were not very much around the globe and the kings used to rule, and so the state visit used to be mostly offered to kings practically, but ever since this democracies arrived and many countries around the world has become democratic. In fact, UK also has a Prime Minister who is now practically the executioner of power, and the kings or the queen are just a symbolic head of the state. So the overall in the later years, the country started extending that state visit honor to the real leader, or the leader who has the power and authority to decide and to rule the country, or to decide or take decision for the country. So in that context, state visit have now been started being extended to the leaders who are not the state leader, the state head. In India's case, the state head is president, of course, but we know the major executioner powers lie with the Prime Minister. So the state visits have been also being started to the Prime Ministers of various countries, and in that context, it is an important visit when the highest level of protocol is being extended to the Prime Minister of India when he is on a visit to USA, and the protocol which is the highest is the official state visit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the United States for a 3-day official state visit. He's obviously going to be meeting the United States President and his wife. But right before that, let's cover the schedule of the Prime Minister, because he's already received a rousing welcome as he landed in New York. He met with Indian diaspora members at the Hotel Lotte in New York. That's where he's going to be staying for the part of his trip, just the day in which he's going to be in New York. Now, over the last few hours, the Prime Minister has met with CEOs and thought leaders, meeting with everyone from Elon Musk, who of course heads both Tesla and Twitter, to authors and astrophysicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, we're going to bring you more context on the meetings itself, but we're also going to first tell you what's planned for the rest of the day. The Prime Minister is going to be participating in International Yoga Days ceremonies. They're going to be taking place at the United Nations lawns. After that, the Prime Minister will be leaving the city of New York. He'll be flying to Washington, where he'll be welcomed by President Joe Biden and his wife for the official part of these meetings. That's where much of the more serious discussions around India and the US's partnership will take place. Now we're going to show you all of the reactions that are coming in right now. These are the thought leaders and CEOs who've met with the Prime Minister. First, we have the head of Bridgewater Associates, billionaire investor Ray Dalio. This is what he had to say. Take a look.
Prime Minister Modi is a man whose time has come at the time that India's time has come. The potential of change.
Thanks a lot for staying with us. Let's get you another voice on the show. Peter Hortez, vaccine scientist, one of the dignitaries who met Prime Minister Modi earlier today. India time is joining us. Peter, thanks a lot for your time. I want to begin by asking you how your meeting was and if you could tell us a little bit of what you discussed.
Well, it was very exciting to have the opportunity. You know, we've been working with Indian scientists for many years. And of course, during the pandemic, we developed a low-cost vaccine technology that ultimately we partnered with Biological E in Hyderabad to produce Corbevax, which was the major vaccine for COVID-19 given to children in India. 75 million kids, 75 million doses were administered to children of this vaccine, and then another 10 million adult boosters, so almost 100 million doses administered. And it was an example of a very productive scientific collaboration between an institution in the United States, our Texas Children's Hospital, and Baylor College of Medicine, together with Biological E in India. And so it was an opportunity to really say, how can we expand these opportunities, expand these scientific collaborations, because they are so productive. And it was for a common good. And think about it. We did this vaccine for, I think it was around 200 rupees a dose, probably one of the lowest cost vaccines available for COVID-19. It was safe and effective. And so it's an example, I think, to be followed that, you know, one of the things I said to Prime Minister Modi, you do not have to be a multinational pharma company to still do important things. And I think, you know, in our collaboration between the US and India actually provided that really, I don't know if it's unprecedented, but very unusual proof of concept that it is possible to do this for humanitarian purposes. And I think he appreciated that. And he was well briefed and knowledgeable. And so it was a real privilege to have that opportunity. I'm very grateful to the Indian ambassador to the U.S., Ambassador Sandhu, has become a good friend and very helpful for this. So all in all, it was a very positive evening.
Since you met the Prime Minister, of course, the occasion of the first state visit for the current Prime Minister, I want to understand from you, how do you see the Indo-US relationships at large? Because this is a relationship that is looked at very keenly, two democracies with many shared values and interests. Despite odds, the countries seem to be expanding their relationship. Your thoughts on that?
Well, the way I think of it is, you know, India and the United States are two of the world's largest democracies. Of course, India, the largest by far. And a statement was once made, without science, there can be no democracy. And so science and scientific research, scientific collaboration are fundamental to democratic values. And I think, you know, our vaccine collaboration symbolizes that kind of activity. And I think we should look at how we can continue it and expand it and develop other vaccines, other life-saving institutions between India's great universities, great pharmaceutical organizations, and our U.S. universities and organizations as well. So I think we're off to a great start, and I'm looking forward to future visits from the Prime Minister and future interactions with the leadership of India.
All right. Thanks a lot, Peter, for your time. Let's also just listen in very quickly to what some of the other American personalities that met the Prime Minister had to say about their meetings.
He really cares about India because he's pushing us to make significant investments in India, which it is something that we intend to do, and we're just trying to figure out the right timing.
potential of India is enormous. And you have now a reformer, a radical reformer, who has the ability to transform it and the popularity to transform it.
I'm quite sure I'm not alone when I say the potential for what India can accomplish knows no limits.
Just as India did this for Aadhaar, I think for telephony and electronic authentication, I think India could really show the world how to do it right.
Long-standing partnership between Qualcomm and India serves to strengthen this strategic relationship and support India's ambitious technology goals.
And it's my pleasure to welcome Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture, Meenakshi Lekhi, is joining us on the show. Ma'am, thanks a lot for your time. Big Yoga Day celebrations once again, and of course those in India or those with the Prime Minister in New York all took part in it. For us, this is a way of life, but increasingly this is becoming a way of life for the entire world as well.
Absolutely. What a pleasure to see everyone doing yoga and connecting over yoga, because I know many people would connect over running, many people will meet over coffee. Now yoga is one way of meeting each other and collectively pray for each other's well-being and do practices which can coordinate your body, mind and soul and achieve equanimity and peace.
Ma'am, I want to understand from you as the Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture, both very key industries that tie in what India is trying to do and take to the world. Because of India's push of yoga and the recognition for the International Day of Yoga, how has that changed the world's view towards India?
So to begin with, I must say 2014, when Prime Minister Modi ji became the Prime Minister, this was one of the first initiatives, a global initiative for the engagement. And when this proposal was sent, 172 countries over a very short span of time supported it. And the result was from 2015, Yoga Day started to get its recognition and started to be celebrated. So it has brought a lot of recognition and well-being, a sense of well-being in the minds of people towards India. Many people were performing yoga, but I would say closeted performers and closeted yogis. But today, with this recognition coming to the fore, everybody is doing yoga as a matter of statement in the parks, outside, and more people have learned the benefits, and especially post-pandemic period and during pandemic, when you could not run, you could not go to the gyms, when hygiene issues came in. At that point in time, yoga was one big thing which helped people. And I remember meeting some of the Europeans, especially the French, who were expert divers, and they ended up talking to, and the naval divers. They said, I said, I would love to learn your techniques. And they said, ma'am, Indians are the past masters at breathing techniques. None can beat you. So this is the kind of recognition which has been sort of brought in directly, indirectly to Indian practices, and which sends a very positive message. Because end of the day, when you do yoga, what are you saying? You're talking about sustainable development goals, low cost medicine or no medicine at all, preventive health care, and practicing yoga where you need no machines, you're not consuming electricity, right, and good thoughts, because it's beyond your physical existence, not just a physical exercise. In addition to physical exercise, it's also an exercise for the mental well-being. Yes. So equanimity, peace and harmony is the message, and well-being of all creatures is what you pray for.
I have two questions for you.
I think it's a very, very positive step.
Meenakshi ji, the way you're speaking, I brought something to my mind, which is that there were a few in opposition to yoga too. Do you believe that some of the opposition to yoga has been blunted with the manner in which it has been accepted globally across religious lines?
Absolutely. I mean, you see, you must understand, and that's what I tell people. I say people have to understand that Hindu system or Sanatan system was not just about practicing religion and worshipping to the gods, but this was one religion which had very close linkages to the science. Yeah, yogic practices which have been today believed to be exercised. So many machines have been put on people to check their heart rate, to check their mental capacity, to see their breathing potential, to see how immunity system operates. So yoga is science, which is understanding body as a machine and understanding the energy systems as soul, which have to work in cooperation with each other and cooperate with each other so that we use this body to the good of the people and to good of ourselves and achieve our goals. The second part of science, Ayurveda. Now, at a time when people did not recognize, Ayurveda was part of the science. We believe in science. We had many thousand years ago recognized the solar system, the distance between earth and moon. So religion was not by itself standalone religion, a faith system, but it had a very integral practices, if I may use the word in today's time and age, the secular practices where everyone gets to be benefited by following that, including the Hindu almanac, which was followed by Arabs and many across the globe.
Right. My final question, ma'am, you are the Minister of State for External Affairs as well. The Prime Minister is on his first state visit to the US. A comment about the Indo-US relationship and the way it's growing.
So Indo-US relationship has got many layers to its existence. One major layer is that of Indian diaspora, which is a very strong diaspora, and that strong diaspora is very well respected in the American society. These are high achievers with very integral practices to the system they work in, and they have been serving their adopted country very well. And when they amalgamate themselves into the societies, they work for the well-being of that society, in addition to the fact a part of their heart and soul remains in India. So when Prime Minister of India goes to US, they get to be they feel elated. The respect which the Prime Minister gets is a respect to 1.4 billion people and to the Indian diaspora spread across the globe. That is one message. The second message is peace, prosperity, technical cooperation on various subjects of science and technology, and of course rule-based order in the world, Indo-Pacific being one part of the same globe. And diversification of the supply chain management, which works well for everyone.
Absolutely. Thank you, ma'am. Limited time, but I do appreciate your time. Minister of State for External Affairs and Culture, Meenakshi Lekhi, joining us. On that note, it's a wrap on Plain Speak. Anand Narasimhan is joining you on the other side with the right stand.
And with the kind of challenges that the unipolarity of world to some extent has received in the recent years, having a practical approach is something that USA also needs to understand, and why USA is coming closer to India has also a lot to do with the facing with the geopolitical realities that are coming from China, that are coming from Russia, and that are also coming from other economies, other emerging economies. So clearly, and we have seen experts like just recently we were listening those remarks by the experts with whom Prime Minister had a meeting, and they were expressing various opinions on the geopolitical issues, how the Indian economy has worked in the last several years, and what Prime Minister Modi's vision has been even before he was the Prime Minister of India, and how did he look at the problems of urbanization and as an opportunity, and what all needed to do to continue that robust economic growth that India is currently very much on. So clearly all those things are being talked about in USA right now, when Prime Minister Modi is interacting with people from all walks of life.
Okay. Abhishek, I now want to understand from you, much attention has been paid to the fact that this is an official state visit. The Prime Minister has travelled to the United States 7 times in the past, but this is the first time it's been accorded that level in terms of diplomatic relations. Can you just explain to our audiences why an official state visit is so important?
So, Toya, we have talked about it earlier also, but for our audience, it is said that a state visit used to be extended to the most powerful leader or the supreme leader of any country back in the era of when the democracies were not very much around the globe and the kings used to rule, and so the state visit used to be mostly offered to kings practically, but ever since this democracies arrived and many countries around the world has become democratic. In fact, UK also has a Prime Minister who is now practically the executioner of power, and the kings or the queen are just a symbolic head of the state. So the overall in the later years, the country started extending that state visit honor to the real leader, or the leader who has the power and authority to decide and to rule the country, or to decide or take decision for the country. So in that context, state visit have now been started being extended to the leaders who are not the state leader, the state head. In India's case, the state head is president, of course, but we know the major executioner powers lie with the Prime Minister. So the state visits have been also being started to the Prime Ministers of various countries, and in that context, it is an important visit when the highest level of protocol is being extended to the Prime Minister of India when he is on a visit to USA, and the protocol which is the highest is the official state visit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the United States for a 3-day official state visit. He's obviously going to be meeting the United States President and his wife. But right before that, let's cover the schedule of the Prime Minister, because he's already received a rousing welcome as he landed in New York. He met with Indian diaspora members at the Hotel Lotte in New York. That's where he's going to be staying for the part of his trip, just the day in which he's going to be in New York. Now, over the last few hours, the Prime Minister has met with CEOs and thought leaders, meeting with everyone from Elon Musk, who of course heads both Tesla and Twitter, to authors and astrophysicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, we're going to bring you more content.
Yoga means to unite. So your coming together is an expression of another form of yoga. About 9 years ago, right here at the UN, I had the honor to propose celebrating the International Day of Yoga on 21st June.
Namaste, Jai Hind and welcome to this edition of The Right Stand. I'm Anand Narsuman. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, after leading the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters, where a Guinness record has been set that the people from the most number of nationalities coming together to do yoga. So that's also etched in the record books this day, the 8th version of the International Yoga Day, the 8th International Yoga Day, 21st of June 2023, etched in the record books. And post this, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will lead the global community as he's celebrating the International Yoga Day, and over 180 nations, prominent personalities all participating. But what's going to be more important is what Prime Minister Narendra Modi will do beyond, going forward. Because post this event, he then heads to Washington, D.C. around 8:30 p.m. IST. Prime Minister Narendra Modi will land at the Joint Base, Andrews Base at Washington, D.C. at about 11:40 p.m. India time. And Prime Minister will attend a skilling for future event at the National Science Foundation. US First Lady Jill Biden and PM Modi will also visit the National Science Foundation at 2:30 a.m. That's in the wee hours of Thursday. Here in India, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is scheduled to meet CEOs of various companies in Washington, D.C. and post the business meet. US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden will receive Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the White House, where they will host an intimate dinner for the Prime Minister. We are given to understand there is time scheduled for a heart-to-heart, private, one-on-one conversation between President Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi before they even sit for dinner. It's a very, very historic trip, because it's the first time in the last 9 years that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been accorded a state visit, or the status of a state visit, his trip to the United States. Joining us now, let's go straight across to him, is renowned academic and someone who's perhaps one of the first foreign nationals or academics to study the RSS very closely from the 70s, nearly 5 decades now. Walter Anderson ji is with us. Namaste. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you. Appreciate being here.
Let me ask you, you had recently commented, and if I remember, my memory serves me right, that Prime Minister Narendra Modi is trying to pinch a few pages from Deng Xiaoping's playbook. Where do you see his current US visit and his engagement with the United States as part of that playbook?
Well, I think he obviously wants for India to play, to get a seat at the high table of international relations. And I think this is an occasion to do so. In fact, going back to your clip there on the Yoga Day at the UN, this is, I think, part of that effort to showcase India and an aspect of Indian culture that's important, with he taking the lead with some 180 countries, as you noted. So I think that's an important part of this visit, and therefore somewhat comparable to previous Chinese efforts to get at the high table, which included visits by high-level Chinese officials to the U.S. And there's a lot of focus being put on this visit, both in India as well as here. And there are a couple of objectives I think the Prime Minister has. One is economically, to build up the economics, which the U.S. and India now have $190 billion in annual trade. I think they want to increase that over the next few years to $500 billion. The other element of the visit is security, obviously, where they will talk about issues, but you might want to sort of talk about sort of restraints on India, constraints regarding that. And obviously the major strategic issue is China and the Indian Ocean. Then, not to be overlooked is the interaction with the Indian American community.
Yes.
The Indian American community is at 4.5 million, growing relatively rapidly. And it's the wealthiest and best educated community in the United States, and plays a role, as we saw during the debates in Congress on the nuclear deal. The Indian American community played a role and continues to play a role in American politics.
But what do you think will be the key takeaway, the one big takeaway that Prime Minister Narendra Modi would want to come away with?
The one big takeaway, I think, is recognition of India as a world leader. And I think our government is preparing to do that, that it takes him seriously, takes India seriously, and India is a player at the high table, which is something I think that Prime Minister Modi has sought for the last few years to do that India has a seat at the high table of international politics.
But what's in it for America? Because America is also known to exact its pound of flesh, Walter. So,
yes, in fact, some Congress people wrote a letter, as you may know, some 75, suggesting that President Biden, in effect, lecture Prime Minister Modi on human rights issues. The White House has said it's not going to lecture. It almost certainly will bring them up. And in fact, India may bring up issues in the United States as well regarding that question. But I think neither one plans to make a big issue of it. I think they will draw attention to it and not make a big issue of it. Because there are other things. For Prime Minister Modi, I think it's India, gets a seat at the high table, and I think President Biden, for a whole variety of reasons, is willing to go along with that. And the other thing, and to do that, is to build up supply chain linkages with India. You're already getting major U.S. companies beginning to sort of invest in India. The Prime Minister has already met with U.S. business people yesterday, and he's planning to do so in the future, including with Musk, who has talked about opening a factory in India to manufacture electrical vehicles.
but can India play a stabilizing factor in the Indo-Pacific? Does India have that economic prowess? Because that's again something which Deng Xiaoping had envisioned, that China can grow stronger only if it's a strong economy. PM Modi seems to be working in that direction.
Well, I think that is, and not only Modi, but his External Affairs Minister, Jai Shankar, has often argued that Indian foreign policy is strengthened by a strong India. And I think that's no doubt that's the case. And I think the Prime Minister believes that as well, that the stronger the economy, the more clout that India has, the more respect it has. And in the case of the Indian External Foreign Ministry, it's how you train people. The Indian Foreign Minister officers, like the U.S., had usually a weak training in economics because the focus was not on economics. The focus was on something else. He, at that time, and this is a couple of years ago, had said that the Indian Foreign Ministry, External Affairs Ministry, had to focus in its overseas work more on economics. And I think that you have something like that in the United States as well, where there's more focus on economics and how to advance the economic interests of our countries. And in the case of India, I think that's clearly the case. Look at this visit. Who's going along? I mean, it's very focused on developing links with private American enterprise, with the hope that private American enterprise invests more with India, and it's starting to happen already. And the other interesting question is, as more industry in China begins to get nervous about being in China, where do they go? And I think, one of the aspects of that is to look at India as an alternative.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi derives his roots from the RSS, from the Sangh. And time and again, there's been an effort to paint him, even by the Congress party closer home and abroad, by those who are spinning a narrative that he's a Hindutvavadi, a fascist leader, a Hindu nationalist leader who has fascist intentions. Would you agree with such a narrative or such an observation?
No, it's much too simplistic. It's the RSS as an organization is very complex in itself, has a number of groups within it. In fact, people should read my most recent book that came out 2 years ago on the RSS, where I go into a whole range of issues and where there's internal debate on issues. So it's not nearly as cohesive and as together on issues. On major issues, there are debates. Take the labor question, for example. There is internally within the Mazdoor Sangh, its labor affiliate, a debate on how that should be proceeding. So, in fact, it's one of the few parties in India that's truly democratic, even though the Prime Minister is extremely popular. In fact, that is a potential problem. He is so popular that, the thing is, the party has to be careful that it doesn't allow his popularity to impede its protection of the electoral process. So far, it doesn't look like it has. As you know, the BJP lost a major election, state election in Karnataka. And it has also done, not as well as in Himachal Pradesh as it did before. India has elections coming up, and so does the U.S., though the Indian one comes slightly before the U.S. elections. And this visit is important for both sides, the American side and the Indian side, for domestic considerations, electoral considerations. It certainly helps Modi in the U.S. to get the appearance of support in the U.S., which he will, I'm sure of that, and all that that goes along with it, because I'm sure your station will broadcast, the state dinner, the address to the joint sessions of Congress, and other things, as you did with the UN at the UN and the yoga. So it is but it's also important for Biden. You've got a large Indian American community. It has a lot of money. And all one has to do is to read the Wall Street Journal, one of the major newspapers of American business, to see how important Indians are becoming in the U.S. world of manufacturing and science and development. So it's and Modi, in fact, has been meeting with some of those people, including some Indian Americans, who are among the CEOs of major corporations.
Walter, in RSS, A View on the Inside, you referred to that in 2018. That was a sequel to Brotherhood in Saffron that was written about 3-4 decades ago, if my memory serves me right.
Late 80s, yes.
Late 80s, yes. So is Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the RSS, are they taking India in the right direction? Have they also evolved? Is India truly going to represent humanity, one world, one family, one future? That's the thought behind the G20 leadership also this time around. Would you agree with that? Or do you have concerns that they may falter and they have issues which they need to contend with? They still haven't got everybody on board.
Well, no, that's true. I mean, there is an internal debate. There is a hard right within it, but so far they have not called the shots on most issues, in fact. And in fact, the BJP has not been able to establish, unlike, the party in China, the kind of control of the political process. It lost an election in one of the largest states in India, Karnataka, recently, and it was looking for Karnataka to be a entree to further gains in the south. Well, that looks like it's not going to happen. And Prime Minister Modi was an active campaigner in on those elections. Now, it's not like the elections weren't, in terms of popular vote, wasn't that far apart, but it was sufficient that I think the BJP has to learn a lesson, and I think it has been. That it has to be cautious about how it appeals to the voter, and which is a very complex. India is such a complex place. When I have to give lectures in India and talk about the dozens of languages and the castes and the economic variations, it's an incredibly complicated place. And can you imagine a democratic political party operating in that context? Yes, is going to have issues it has to sort of handle. I think India by and large has done well. Elections have gone ahead. There have been wins and losses, including losses by the governing party, where it had, in the case of Karnataka, a recent case, it's had to shift. But it's done very well in some recent elections too. Prime Minister's own state of Gujarat, it had an unprecedented victory. But there are places where it has not. And as long as the electoral process stays open, I think that Indian democracy is served by that participation and speaking out. It's not that there aren't issues. There are issues about the press, which you probably well know about, and there are issues on other issues such as Rahul Gandhi and whether or not he can actually participate as a parliamentarian. So there are those issues which are there. Some of them may be mentioned in this visit of the Prime Minister to the U.S., but as I said, the White House has said it intends to engage and not lecture India on that. Now, that's an important statement it's making, because that's obviously a statement you make to a world leader, that you're not going to sort of embarrass him in ways that could damage him at home or internationally. And the Prime Minister is clearly here. I think his major reason is to, ensure that he has a place at the high table of international politics.
My final question, Walter. Antony Blinken leaves China's shores or flies out of China, and Joe Biden calls Xi Jinping a dictator. Joe Biden and Jill Biden, they're going to engage with the Prime Minister quite a bit. Do you see this setting up a conflict between India and China in the near future? Do you see a conflict arising in this region because of growing India-US proximity?
Well, there is problems between India and China already in the region. I actually, as you may know, I actually taught in China for several years.
Yes.
And one of the things that always struck me about dealing with Chinese who deal with foreign affairs is the Chinese respect strength. And that certainly, Prime Minister Modi and his defense minister certainly have asserted themselves that India, puts up a strong resistance to any threats to it. Are they worried about the relationship with the U.S.? They are, but I think the Indians themselves, one of the major points about Indian foreign policy is it will not join an alliance. It will not be a participant in any assertive activity. And here I'm thinking about China,
right?
But perhaps even Pakistan, unless there's a direct threat to India from those countries. It just will not, because I think it argues, rightly in my view, that such alliances undermine the maneuverability of Indian foreign policy.
Great. Walter Anderson, always a pleasure speaking with you, and thank you very much for making the time. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We look forward to...
Loved your 2018 book, though. Thank you.
I'm glad you did. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hopefully some people will buy. Who are listening to this will buy the book.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Namaste. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let's quickly get a move on here and stay with the aspect of the dragon. China is at it again. This time, Beijing has blocked India and US's joint move to designate Sajid Mir a global terrorist. Sajid Mir is a Pak-based Lashkar-e-Taiba operative who's wanted in the 2008 Mumbai terror attacks. The block by China follows its use of a quote-unquote technical hold to stymie a similar move by India earlier too. India has slammed China at the UN and said that there's something genuinely wrong in this fight against terrorism and it's nothing but petty geopolitical interests. India also has offered several solutions to the UN Security Council to prevent member states from backing terrorists. So, by shielding Sajid Mir, is Beijing drawing the battle lines? We'll talk about that, but first, let's tell you a little more about Sajid Mir. Who is Sajid Mir, whom India and US want to be tagged as a global terrorist? He's a Pak-based Lashkar-e-Taiba operative, chief planner of the 26/11 Mumbai attacks. US placed a $5 million bounty on his head, listed on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list, one of India's most wanted terrorists, plotted the terrorist attack in Australia in 2003, and there was an audio recording of his that was played in the UN, wherein he is actually instructing terrorists holed inside the Taj Hotel that if you see anybody walking around on the terraces, shoot them down. Now, this is not the first time that China has blocked India's proposal. Masood Azhar, Jaish-e-Mohammed chief. First, China shielded Jaish-e-Mohammed chief Masood Azhar. China first put a technical hold in 2009, 2016, 2017 and March 2019. And China said it needs more time to assess information and finally accepted it in the fifth proposal in May 2019. China also blocked a bid by India to designate Abdul Rauf Asghar, one of the masterminds of the 1998 IC-814 hijacking, as a global terrorist, and said that it needs more time to carefully evaluate the proposal. Asghar is a brother of Pak-based Jaish-e-Mohammed terrorist Masood Azhar. Now, he's accused of masterminding a number of terror attacks himself. It's not the first time China has blocked a bid to tag Sajid Mir as a global terrorist. Last year in September too, China blocked India's bid. In October 2022, China blocked the bid to designate Talha Saeed, son of Lashkar-e-Taiba chief Hafiz Saeed, as a UN-listed terrorist. Now, at a high-level United Nations conference on counter-terrorism, India lashed out at China after it blocked India's bid. Prakash Gupta, the Joint Secretary at the United Nations, said justice still continues to elude the victims of Mumbai terror attacks and played an audio recording of Sajid Mir guiding fellow terrorists to hunt down foreigners inside the Taj Hotel and kill them indiscriminately.
He was listed as a proscribed terrorist under the national laws of India. He was proscribed under the laws of the United States, this host country, and of several other countries globally, many of whose nationals lost their lives. But when the proposal for listing him did not go through the Security Council sanctions regime, we had strong reasons to believe that something was genuinely wrong in the global sanctions regime, as manifested in the Security Council. If we cannot get established terrorists who have been proscribed across global landscapes listed under the Security Council architecture for pure geopolitical interests, then we really do not have the genuine political will needed to sincerely fight this challenge of terrorism.
तो जो जहाँ पे आपको मूवमेंट नजर आती है, बंदा किस छत पे चल रहा है, कोई आ रहा है जा रहा है, उसको फायर ठोको. उसे नहीं पता यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है. इंशाल्लाह। तो जो जहाँ पे आपको मूवमेंट नजर आती है, बंदा जिस छत पे चल रहा है, कोई आ रहा है जा रहा है, उसको फाइट ठोको, उसे नहीं पता यहाँ पे क्या हो रहा है। इंशाल्लाह।
And on the same story, a mega CNN News 18 exclusive, our investigations editor Manoj Gupta getting us these inputs from top intel sources who are telling News 18 that Sajid Mir blocking is desperate attempt by China to support Pakistan in terror activities. Top intelligence sources telling CNN News 18 that while Pakistan denies the location of Sajid Mir, India has given his locations multiple times, including video proof. Intel source reveals that Sajid Mir is accused in 26/11 Mumbai attacks and should be punished to save the world from terror activities. We are also given to understand why our intel source that his name was even confessed by David Coleman Headley, and everything is on record. Kamal Sibal, former Foreign Secretary, with us. Professor Victor Gao, Chair Professor at Shuchao University, with us. VP CCG and former Chinese diplomat, and also Daniel S. Markey, Senior Advisor, South Asia, United States Institute of Peace. Namaste. Thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. Kamal Sibalji, how would you respond to this? How does India take this forward? A lot of experts have been critical of India for not taking China's name openly while making this mention. Where would you stand?
Well, I think this decision by China, once again, to block the designation of Sajid Mir as a terrorist, we just heard, a phone conversation by this fellow. Asking the terrorists to kill anybody who moved.
Yes.
I mean, China is sending several messages. One is that they are not at all concerned about India's sensitivities. They don't want to send any positive message to India. Even if the G20 summit is in the offing, they don't want to even make a gesture which will actually cost them nothing. Okay, the border issue is a much more complex matter, and we are having bilateral discussions. But on this, the case is so clear. The case is so clear, but they don't feel obliged at all to make any positive gesture which might create the right atmosphere for a G20 meeting if Xi Jinping comes to India. Number two, China is violating all its commitments it has made in various forums, whether it is the BRICS summit, BRICS forum, or SCO, or the G20, or any other discussion in international forum, even when it relates to Afghanistan and everything else, where everybody agrees on countering international terrorism. China is party to all this, but yet when it comes to India, it violates all its commitments and actually doesn't bother about how it looks, how the world will look at it, how its image may get affected. They're quite unbothered. And thirdly, of course, there's complicity between China and Pakistan, long-standing complicity, because China knows what the message is, that they will support Pakistan on terrorism directed at India. And it is at Pakistan's behest that China does all this. They want to cultivate favor with Pakistan at the expense of India and at the expense of an international consensus on countering terrorism. They have been, as you know, Anand, in various forums, actually praising Pakistan for fight against terrorism, saying how much Pakistan has sacrificed itself in its fight against terrorism. And yet, when it comes to Chinese nationals being attacked in Pakistan, then China, of course, goes into a huff and is very unhappy that Pakistan doesn't provide protection.
Let me ask, let's ask.
It's an extremely selfish, self-centered view that China takes, and it will have repercussions on its relations with India inevitably.
But let's ask Professor Victor Gao, why pick Pakistan over India? We are a more reliable nation, stronger, safer, and of course more financially much sound. Why would you want to put your eggs in a bottomless bucket, Professor Victor Gao?
Thank you very much for having me. As far as China is concerned, the Indian subcontinent, which now contains both India and Pakistan, has always been very important to China. And throughout thousands of years, the relations between China and the Indian subcontinent has always been peaceful. Now the fact that there is India on the one hand and Pakistan on the other hand, China need to make decisions on the merits of each of the situation. There is no denying that China-Pakistani solidarity and cooperation are deeply rooted. and nothing can shake this brotherliness between China and Pakistan. On the other hand, I would say China values friendship and good neighborliness with India. After all, both China and India each has a population of more than 1.4 billion, and they have tremendous amount of responsibilities for each of us, as well as for mankind as a whole. Therefore, I don't think China wants to develop China-Pakistani relations and friendship at the expense of China-India relations. And I do hope eventually China's relations with India as well as with Pakistan will be tremendously beneficial for each of us. And as China has pulled off the peace treaty between Iran and Saudi Arabia, I hope eventually China can play a very positive role in creating a better rapprochement between India and Pakistan.
When you say, Professor Victor Gao,
neighboring countries.
Professor Victor Gao, when you say equations with Pakistan, I hope you mean the Pakistan military establishment and the Pakistan civilian government. Is that
well,
what?
From the Chinese perspective, there is only one Pakistan, and we do not bother in the domestic internal affairs of Pakistan.
I mean,
whether it's involving the Pakistani government or the military.
So is Sajid Mir a proscribed terrorist? Sajid Mir, a proscribed terrorist, also part of this brotherhood of Pakistan?
Allow me to emphasize, China is a victim of international cross-border terrorism in itself. Therefore, China condemns cross-border international terrorism in all shapes and colors. Then, as to how to deal with each organization, China will need to make its own decision on the merits of each decision, and China will need to do its own homework, rather depending on the representations of any of the other organizations. Therefore, I hope you will also respect China's sovereign right to make its own decision as to how it wants to designate an organization one way or another. That decision is not made by any other country, but by China itself.
Yeah, but Sajid Mir is a proscribed terrorist. We've got visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi leaving New York and heading towards the Andrews base in Washington, D.C. Plenty of people who have come there, the diaspora wanting to meet him, and then him making his way out. So the popularity of Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the time invested by President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden, very evident. The diaspora, very popular. Daniel, China says it does not respect terrorists, but they continue to exercise this technical hold. How would you read this? Are we looking at an escalation? Is China clearly saying either US or us to India?
I don't perceive this as necessarily an escalation. I think Ambassador Sybil had it exactly right. This is a pattern that's been going on for some time. China's been shielding a variety of Pakistan-based terrorists from international action. These are individuals who are quite clearly problematic, should not be shielded from sanction. But China sees its relationship with Pakistan as very important. I think China pockets some advantages with Pakistan from doing this. Some leverage, some influence is seen as helpful by Pakistan. I think China has, unfortunately, for regional stability, more or less reached a conclusion that it's got a serious problem on its hands with India, and that India and the United States are increasingly tied together, and that makes the India problem that much harder. So I think China is not only signaling to Pakistan, to India, it's also signaling to the United States that it doesn't need to play by these particular rules, and that it will continue to sort of do what suits China best, and not necessarily to see terrorism in the way that we do. And I'll make one last point. The Chinese have, obviously there have been some very high-level meetings between our Secretary of State Blinken and Chinese leaders in Beijing, where both sides have suggested that there may be more that they can do together in a cooperative way, with some serious caveats. I think a message like this is another indication of the limits of that cooperation and the way that China will sort of frame that cooperation in ways that suit Beijing, not necessarily ways that suit the United States.
Ambassador Sybil?
Well, China is a permanent member of the UN Security Council. It plays a very active role in the United Nations. It talks about the UN Charter, etc., etc. Part of adhering to the UN Charter and UN principles is the fight against terrorism. And here China has double standards. When it comes to terrorism directed at China, that's a big issue. When it comes to terrorism directed at India, it's not an issue. They will support Pakistan. Now, the point is that there are elements in Pakistan actually who are promoting terrorism against China. India has absolutely no role in promoting any kind of terrorism against China. And yet China doesn't see the difference. Because China has this very arrogant posture towards India that they don't need to bother about India's sensitivities. They have the power, so they can do what they want in accordance with their own interests. Just now the Chinese gentleman said that they will decide on their own what the realities are. What will they do? Will they go and investigate on the ground, send people on the ground, talk to Sajid Mir, talk to the Pakistani establishment, find out what the reality is, talk to other people who have information about his role? After all, United States put a $5 million bounty on it. When they say they will talk to, they make their own judgment based on what? Based on their hostility towards India, or based on certain principles on which there is a genuine international consensus. Now, as far as China's role in Saudi Arabia, Iran is concerned, let's not hype it up. Let's not hype it up. It is actually Iraq and Oman that played a vital role. And of course, Iraq and Iran both wanted some kind of a big power that could give some kind of a cover to this agreement, and they went to China. So let's not hype this peace business. If they really mean peace, then they should make peace with India on the border.
But Kamal Sibalji and Daniel, final...
Agree to revert back to the positions they held.
I have the final 2 minutes. So quickly, I want to understand, how do we change this status quo, especially at the UN? This veto power thing, how can this be undone? The reforms, if they have to kick in, if there have got to be additions to the UN Security Council, changes in the UN, how is this going to happen? Kamal Sibalji, and then Daniel.
It won't happen in the foreseeable future, frankly, because there is a consensus that UN should be reformed, but how it should be reformed, what should be the numbers involved in terms of permanent members, non-permanent members, there is no agreement. And then China will not let India come in. China will not let Japan come in. Russia will not let Japan come in and Germany come in. We have a consensus, at least 3 or 4 permanent members. But there are other people in the global south that we are taking leadership of, which do not support India's permanent membership, for that matter, any expansion of permanent membership. So I think it's going to be a very difficult task.
So then do we dismantle UN altogether? Should nations move away and form a separate organization, Daniel? Because this is like a never-ending merry-go-round.
Right. No, I mean, there's going to be frustration with the UN process. That's been a feature of the UN basically since the start. Ambassador, again, is correct. Don't anticipate any near-term reforms that would resolve this particular problem, or even some of the more general problems about lack of representation for vast parts of the world at the UN, and so on and so forth. It's not going to change. That doesn't mean you get rid of it, though. The UN serves other purposes. If the UN didn't exist, you'd need to reinvent it. People need a place, physical place, and different mechanisms to meet, and it's good to have these conversations, even if we don't get what we want through the UN process.
Right.
The United States and India and other countries who are concerned about these terrorist groups can still speak up, and they can do so in the UN, and that's part of its value.
Well, let's see what happens in that one-on-one personal engagement, private engagement between President Joe Biden and Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Kamal Sibalji and also Daniel, thank you. Daniel Market, thank you very much for your time. Victor Gao, Professor Victor Gao, thank you for your time. Ladies and gentlemen, before we take a short break, quickly going across to Annalise Richmond-Ji, who's joining us now. If you have watched the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters, she was the one leading everybody, leading the proceedings there. She's a yoga guru herself, a very senior teacher at the Art of Living, and I'm hoping she's able to join us. Annalise Ji, namaste, and thank you very, very much for your time. I know you're just stepping out of the UN headquarters. How was the experience? I believe you've walked into the record books.
Yes, it was overwhelmingly beautiful. It was quite an honor and privilege that Art of Living Foundation was invited to lead the yoga for Prime Minister Modi ji. and the mayor of New York City, and we got to have our young yoga enthusiasts as young as the age of 8 were part of leading the yoga. They trained for a few weeks for this, and it was very, very beautiful and very inspiring to see Prime Minister Modi ji practicing yoga with so much, passion and so much presence in the middle of this beautiful field with everyone.
Was he able to do the entire routine? Did you get a chance to speak with the Prime Minister?
I did. He came and spoke with us afterwards. He actually invited all of the children to come visit India. They were very excited about that. And he told us that we led it perfectly with much precision, and he was very happy about it and the peaceful meditation. And it's really wonderful to meet him in person. You can tell he practices yoga and meditation because he has such a peaceful and welcoming vibe.
Were you nervous? You are leading perhaps the largest group of nationalities. That's the Guinness record that you have set. Maximum nationalities coming together to perform yoga. I know you're a senior teacher, but was there any nervous moment for you?
Maybe I was a little nervous because I've been leading yoga and meditation with Art of Living for 23 years.
Yes.
But I normally lead according to what I feel the audience wants. But this time there was a protocol, of course, and I had to learn the protocol. But once I stepped onto the stage and saw so many beautiful people ready to practice, I realized we're here to make them feel peaceful. So it was actually very peaceful. I do feel like that this is a chance for us to express that the world is a one world family, Vasudeva Kutumbakam,
yes,
which is one of the most beautiful messages that comes out of India. And today we truly had a one world family, 135 countries in one yoga session. Art of Living will also be doing this in Washington, D.C. on the National Mall, right in front of the Capitol building.
Wow.
The World Culture Festival
Yes, in September.
also will bring together 180 countries as a one world family on September 30th and September 29th and October 1st. And that is the next step to make 100,000 people meditate together and practice yoga. So in the United States, we're very inspired by this concept of one world family, and we'd like to help make it happen.
Is yoga science or spiritualism? Is there any element of theology involved to all the naysayers who believe it's a religious push, it's a Hindutva push? Annalise ji, for somebody who's been practicing it for 23 years, let me ask you.
You know what's interesting is in 2004, about 5 years after I started teaching yoga and breathing techniques through the Art of Living, I took it into the public school system and into the universities in the USA. We now have it in 108 universities, public and private. And I would say the human being breathes, right? Do you breathe? I also breathe. There's nothing spiritual, well, there is spiritual, but nothing religious or theological about breathing. It is something that's connected to the human nervous system. And when we get in touch with our breath and learn how to use it, we learn how to calm our emotions, maintain peace and equanimity. Even in the midst of chaos, we can be very strong, calm, and powerful. And that's something that every human being who has 2 feet and 2 eyes needs to learn how to do. And that is something basic and also spiritual to the human existence.
So science and spiritualism, nothing religious about it. That's what you're saying. That's the art of living. And that's what you're practicing. And you've made so many of them do today at the UN headquarters. Annalise Richmond ji, thank you so much for your time and at short notice for joining us here this evening. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a very short break. When we come back, what does Rajiv Chandrasekhar, Union Minister, think about the Musk versus Dorsey? Whose tweet or point of view does he verify? We ask him that question. Stay with us.
So it was a very good conversation about urbanization, and he articulated very well the main message, which is that urbanization is not a problem, it's an opportunity. And I take it this is a slogan that he's used before. So for me, a good day is when I learn something, and I learned a bunch about what India is doing. India could really show the world how to do it right.
My colleague Abhishek joins us this morning from the newsroom to prepare you, our audiences, with all that it is you need to know to understand the meetings that are taking place. Abhishek, good morning. Abhishek, one expert summarized the next 3 days in a single sentence. He said that the goal for both Prime Minister Modi and for the US President Joe Biden is to create a balanced security equation in Asia long term. Do you agree with that?
Of course, because having a hawkish stance is not going to work, and with the kind of challenges that the unipolarity of world to some extent has received in the recent years, having a practical approach is something that USA also needs to understand, and why USA is coming closer to India has also a lot to do with the facing with the geopolitical realities that are coming from China, that are coming from Russia, and that are also coming from other economies, other emerging economies. So clearly, and we have seen experts like just recently we were listening those remarks by the experts with whom Prime Minister had a meeting, and they were expressing various opinions on the geopolitical issues, how the Indian economy has worked in the last several years, and what Prime Minister Modi's vision has been even before he was the Prime Minister of India, and how did he look at the problems of urbanization and as an opportunity, and what all needed to do to continue that robust economic growth that India is currently very much on. So clearly, all those things are being talked about in USA right now, when Prime Minister Modi is interacting with people from all walks of life.
Okay. Abhishek, I now want to understand from you, much attention has been paid to the fact that this is an official state visit. The Prime Minister has travelled to the United States 7 times in the past, but this is the first time it's been accorded that level in terms of diplomatic relations. Can you just explain to our audiences why an official state visit is so important?
So, Toya, we have talked about it earlier also, but for our audience, it is said that a state visit used to be extended to the most powerful leader or the supreme leader of any country back in the era of when the democracies were not very much around the globe and the kings used to rule, and so the state visit used to be mostly offered to kings practically, but ever since this democracies arrived and many countries around the world has become democratic. In fact, UK also has a Prime Minister who is now practically the executioner of power, and the kings or the queen are just a symbolic head of the state. So the overall in the later years, the country started extending that state visit honor to the real leader, or the leader who has the power and authority to decide and to rule the country, or to decide or take decision for the country. So in that context, state visit have now been started being extended to the leaders who are not the state leader, the state head. In India's case, the state head is president, of course, but we know the major executioner powers lie with the Prime Minister. So the state visits have been also being started to the Prime Ministers of various countries, and in that context, it is an important visit when the highest level of protocol is being extended to the Prime Minister of India when he is on a visit to USA, and the protocol which is the highest is the official state visit.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi in the United States for a 3-day official state visit. He's obviously going to be meeting the United States President and his wife. But right before that, let's cover the schedule of the Prime Minister, because he's already received a rousing welcome as he landed in New York. He met with Indian diaspora members at the Hotel Lotte in New York. That's where he's going to be staying for the part of his trip, just the day in which he's going to be in New York. Now, over the last few hours, the Prime Minister has met with CEOs and thought leaders, meeting with everyone from Elon Musk, who of course heads both Tesla and Twitter, to authors and astrophysicists like Neil deGrasse Tyson. Now, we're going to bring you more context on the meetings itself, but we're also going to first tell you what's planned for the rest of the day. The Prime Minister is going to be participating in International Yoga Days ceremonies. They're going to be taking place at the United Nations lawns. After that, the Prime Minister will be leaving the city of New York. He'll be flying to Washington, where he'll be welcomed by President Joe Biden and his wife, for the official part of these meetings. That's where much of the more serious discussions around India and the US's partnership will take place. Now we're going to show you all of the reactions that are coming in right now. These are the thought leaders and CEOs who've met with the Prime Minister. First, we have the head of Bridgewater Associates, billionaire investor Ray Dalio. This is what he had to say. Take a look.
Prime Minister Modi is a man whose time has come at the time that India's time has come. The potential of India is enormous, and you have now a reformer, a radical reformer, who has the ability to transform it and the popularity to transform it. So I think India and Prime Minister Modi are at a juncture in which there's going to create a tremendous opportunity, tremendous changes in India that are going to be really startling.
He asked me if I had heard from anybody anything that he might know. So in a way he asked, when I was in Delhi and so on. And I only mentioned that I think people in the whole world would be very excited if he made a little more strong statement about the invasion of Ukraine and disapproving of that, unlike Xi Jinping, who is like a big autocrat and has to tell Putin to go ahead. Meanwhile, Russia is really in trouble, And so India has old friendship, and I don't mean some extreme thing, but he might just mention how, invading another country is not really a good idea.
I was delighted to spend time in the company of a head of state who is as scientifically thoughtful as is Prime Minister Modi. So many leaders of the world, I think their priorities might be out of balance with what it needs to be going into the 21st century. With all of the challenges we have in civilization, the solutions are going to come from innovations in science and technology and engineering.
Let's go straight across to Union Minister Rajiv Chandrasekharji, who's joining us on a day when thought leaders are commending Prime Minister Narendra Modi. On the 9th edition of the International Yoga Day, the celebrations have just gotten over with Prime Minister Narendra Modi leading it there at the UN headquarters. Rajivji, namaste. The world is bending to India's tune, but leaders who came out said it's some very significant and good things after meeting the PM.
Absolutely, I think it is a tremendous vindication of what Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji has done for India over the last 9 years, and to have these global leaders come out and talk about India in these terms, where Elon Musk says, I think India has more promise than any other country in the world. Ray Dalio, the investor, says the potential of India is enormous. And then when you say Neil deGrasse Tyson say, I'm sure that I'm not alone when I say the potential for India can accomplish knows no limits. It is absolutely gratifying that the world today is recognizing India's rise and is looking at the future that India represents with a great deal of awe and respect and positivity. I think it is, as an Indian, I feel tremendously proud when I hear it, and it's not because some foreigner is saying it. I think this is a feeling that most Indians have, most young Indians have, about the optimism about the future in terms of looking into the future for India. But when the rest of the world also echoes what we feel, I think it's certainly a vindication and validation of how far we have traveled as a nation.
But Rajivji, when they say that India has potential, Elon Musk says, I'm coming to India next year, we'll set up Tesla or we'll bring it when humanly possible. There's a sense of deja vu. In the past भी कहा जाता था हमें देखना है, हम देख रहे हैं, हम देखते रहेंगे.
No, look, I think, Anand, you have to understand that there is a trend that is very, very visible to those who want to see it. And the trend is this, that every global brand today, whether it is Apple or Samsung or Cisco or any of these brands that are tech brands or manufacturing brands, are increasingly looking at India as a cannot ignore part of their supply chain. And I will predict today that in the next 3 to 5 years, India will be an almost necessity for every company that is in the manufacturing space for India to be a manufacturing hub. We are progressing down this line. And Anand, when people look at these statements and say, oh, it's a cup half full, he has not said he's flying tomorrow and he's not setting up the plant day after tomorrow, that is not how these decisions are made. These are big decisions, big plants that require big investments, big skills, big talent, and a big kind of logistical infrastructure to be built. So these are not trivial decisions that that are to be made at the snap of a finger. But the fact that Elon Musk is saying that India is certainly on his radar, he is certainly going to evaluate India as a manufacturing hub for his next generation EVs is a positive, very, very positive thing, because Tesla then joins the rest of these global brands in evaluating India as being a trusted part of their supply chain.
True, but Rajiv ji, Musk versus Dorsey, whose tweet are you going to verify?
No, I think, look, I have always maintained that as far as the government is concerned, we really don't bother about who the owner of a platform is. It is really what we are tasked with is to ensure that platforms comply with Indian law. And I have repeatedly said this is not some adversarial jousting between the government and the platform. It is a commonsensical expectation of any company that comes to India, wants to do business in India, that they comply with Indian law, because that is the way democracies function, that is the way countries where rule of law is followed. Whether you're a manufacturing company, you're an internet platform, you're a social media platform, foreign or Indian, big or small, in India if you do business, you have to comply with Indian law. There is nothing more commonsensical and simple and intuitive to understand than that. But unfortunately, I think in some cases, this was not easily understood, and some people were under this misguided, delusional belief that the laws and rules of India did not apply. And I am glad that today, across the board, most platforms, if not all, accept that compliance with Indian laws is not some request, but it's an actual need. It's an absolute must.
Point well made. But the Congress has now posted a picture of former Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru's Shirshasana and taken a jibe at Prime Minister Narendra Modi with Kamarasana. How would you want to respond?
No, I don't want to respond to them at all. I think their single point agenda is that whenever there is something to celebrate, that they come in there like a wet blanket to create a downer, some sort of a narrative out there. I certainly don't want to waste my time responding to them. There's an old saying that I use when people try and provoke me on the internet: never wrestle with a pig, because the pig walks away very happy, and the person who wrestled with the pig just walks away dirty. So I don't intend to engage into any of their debate that they want to provoke people into. They're free to do what they want. They're free to post however outrageous images that they want to post. It's a free world, and they're protected by Article 14 and 19.
Well, internal politics to geopolitics. On the issue of Sajid Mir, China has once again blocked a move to get him proscribed as a global terrorist. Do you believe these are signs which are ominous for Bharat?
No, look, I think the message that countries and democracies today are sending to the world is an important message, that rule of law is important. That at the end of the day, a wider set of alignment to the values that all people are entitled to be safe, to law and order, to safety, and it cannot be that you have different standards for different types of crimes and different countries committing the same crime. So I think this is a in a sense, a conflict between two sets of values that is happening in public around the world. And the people of the world eventually and slowly will decide that it is not enough to look at everything through opportunism and through geopolitics. That India's message of Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, India's message of equity and opportunity and fairness and rule of law, and that democracies like India and US and other democracies really are trying to spread a message that every citizen, even if it is a citizen in an embattled country, needs to be having a right to safety and security, and terrorism should not be given a free pass just because the terrorist happens to be a friend of a country or an ally country. So I think these are conversations that the world is going to have to engage in, and India is on the right side of this. Like Honorable Prime Minister has said, that we are not neutral. We are proponents of peace. We are not neutral in any of these disputes. We basically talk about sovereignty, integrity, and a fight against terrorism that is based on common values and consistency. So I think this is, Anand, this is something that will have to play out over the coming years.
Well, Rajiv Chandrasekharji, always a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you very, very much for once again taking the right stand. Thank you so much. Namaste. Well, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to wind up this edition of The Right Stand, but not before we say a quick hello to the one and only Zaka Jacob, who's ready with brass tacks, but from New York City. I can see the smile. Good early morning to you, Zaka. With the suit, don't tell me you did yoga with the suit today. I saw you at the UN headquarters.
So this morning has been a crisscross across New York City. Right now I'm coming to you live from 30 Hudson Yards, which is the headquarters, the offices of CNN here in New York City. It's on the west side of town. And earlier this morning at about 7, 8 in the morning, we were on the east side of town at the UN headquarters, which is in this beautiful neighborhood, Turtle Bay. So we basically crisscrossed from the east side of the city to the west side of the city to bring you brass tacks live from New York.
So was it the tube or was it shoes? You had your running shoes on. Did you take the tube or did you whistle and hail a cab and make your way across?
You know,
that's how they do it in New York.
When TV calls you, you always have a cab at your service. So yeah, we cabbed it across town.
But was that historic? I just want to ask you, what you witnessed today, did you expect such a huge turnout? They've entered into the Guinness records. Before we get into brass tacks, I think we just got 30 seconds for me to understand from you. Did you expect such a huge turnout at the UN headquarters?
Oh, I think it was pretty phenomenal. I think the organizers were saying that they were expecting about 3,000 people. We had figures in that ballpark, but I think more than the number, it was really about the different nationalities who turned up. And like you said, the Guinness Book of World Records has acknowledged this as the event, singular event in which multiple nationalities, people from multiple nationalities have taken part. 135, I think, is the official figure that they gave. I think it was pretty phenomenal. I think it sort of stamps the fact that yoga is now part of mainstream consciousness and culture here in America. So thank you very much. On that note, welcome to this special live edition of Brass Tacks, coming to you live from New York City. As I said, you can see the New York skyline right behind me, the beautiful Hudson River. I'm coming to you from 30 Hudson Yards, which is the CNN offices here in New York City. So it was a momentous occasion at the UN headquarters. Prime Minister Modi leading 130 plus nations, representatives of 130 plus nations in the International Yoga Day celebrations. Now he will leave for Washington, D.C., where the business end of this visit will begin. Tomorrow he'll have bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden, and then of course followed by a state dinner tomorrow evening. But aside of the symbolism and what we saw today at the UN HQ, what we're likely to see tomorrow at the White House, what does this visit mean in substantive terms? All that and more we'll discuss over the course of the next 1 hour right here on Brass Tacks. But first, just a compilation of what we have seen, the incredible scenes that we have seen in the last 24 hours. All right, just before we go to that, I think we're getting live pictures from Washington, D.C. of Prime Minister Modi arriving there. Remember, he concluded the Yoga Day event at 9:45 and then took off straight from there to Washington, D.C. I believe he's just landed there in D.C. It's a short plane ride, about an hour or so. And all right, this is the diaspora. All right, we'll try and get you the pictures of the Prime Minister as and when they are available. This is the diaspora getting ready to welcome the Prime Minister as he lands in D.C. He will head straight to his hotel, where he will have in the afternoon a meeting with CEOs and thought leaders and other individuals from the Beltway. And then in the evening, he has a private dinner with the Bidens. But first, like I said, a compilation of what we've seen over the last 24 hours since the Prime Minister landed in America. At the people here who have gathered to greet him, to meet him, just to get a glimpse of him, as you see the Prime Minister there waving at the crowds that have gathered here.
I'm here to see our Honorable Prime Minister, Mr. Narendra Modi.
Oh, it dramatically changes one's life. It's a way of life. It keeps you healthy, well, and mentally peaceful.
Yoga means to unite. So your coming together is an expression of another form of yoga. About 9 years ago, right here at the UN, I had the honor to propose celebrating the International Day of Yoga on 21st June.
All right, we'll be joined by a special panel through the course of this hour here on Brass Tacks. Let me first introduce Adel Nazarian, foreign policy analyst and CEO of US Blockchain PAC. Richard Rosso is the director and chair of the US